We are on the air. I call the 2431st meeting of the Milwaukee City Council to order. This meeting is being held in person at City Hall and by video conference. The public may participate in this meeting by coming to City Hall or joining the Zoom webinar. The meeting is being broadcast live on the city's YouTube channel and Comcast Cable Channel 30 within city limits. There will be opportunities for the public to speak during this meeting. If you would like to address council, you may come to City Hall or participate via Zoom. If you are interested in speaking, please let staff know by filling out a yellow comment card for those at City Hall or emailing ocr@milwaukeeoregon.gov for those on Zoom. When it is time to take public comments, staff will monitor the comment cards, email inbox, and Zoom participant list and chat. We will take comments in the order they are received and seen. Comments may be emailed to ocr@milwaukeeoregon.gov. We ask that all Zoom participants who intend to speak label their Zoom username to show their first and last names for the record. Spanish translation services are available upon request. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. For more information, contact the city recorder at 503-786-7502. Servicios de traducción en español está disponible cuando sea solicitado. Se pide al público que solicite servicios de traducción y otros servicios de accesibilidad por lo menos 48 horas antes de la reunión. Para obtener más información, llama al secretario de la ciudad a 503-786-7502. Translation services are also available in other languages. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The city of Milwaukee respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalapuya Etc. Treaty, with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. And then we will move on to some announcements. The Llewellyn Neighborhood District Association's annual Concerts in the Park continue tomorrow with the Portland School of Rock House Band, and then next Wednesday with the much beloved Norman Sylvester. Those concerts begin at 6:30 p.m. in Ball Michelle Park. The Ardenwald Johnson Creek Neighborhood District Association's annual concerts in the park continue this Thursday with Shelley Rudolph blending jazz, soul, and blues. And next Thursday, they have Ben Rice, who is quite an amazing local musician. So those concerts begin at 6:30 p.m. and are held in Ardenwald Park. So just to be clear, Ball Michelle Park on Wednesdays, Ardenwald Park on Thursdays. City Manager Emma Sagor will hold an open door session on Friday, August 22nd, that's this Friday, from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. at City Hall. This is a great opportunity to ask questions, raise concerns, or just learn more about what the city is currently working on. No registration is necessary. Those attending are seen on a first-come, first-served basis. The session will take place at City Hall in the third floor Bing Cherry Conference Room, which is right as you get off the elevator. Join the downtown Milwaukee community on Friday, September 5th for the next First Friday event. First Friday is a great opportunity to support downtown businesses while also fostering Milwaukee's arts, music, and food community. The Milwaukee Environmental Stewards Group brings their 4th annual Sustainability Fair to Milwaukee this year on Saturday, September 6th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. The event includes local vendors, the Milwaukie Arts Committee, trash and fashion show, food, drinks, music, and kids' activities. The event takes place in the parking lot at Harrison and Main, where the farmers market is on Sundays. You can learn more details. There's a lot of opportunities there to bring things to be recycled and reused. There's a clothing swap. There's a chance to bring household goods to Community Warehouse and Habitat for Humanity so they get reused by families in the greater community. So do go to their website and check it out. It's MilwaukeeESG.org. ESG stands for Environmental Stewards Group. So MilwaukeeESG.org for all of the details on who will be there to accept what kind of recycling and reuse products. For more information about each of these events and others, please visit the city's homepage at milwaukieoregon.gov or call 503-786-7555. And then I have a haiku, and I want to put in a pitch for more haiku submissions, or I'm going to have to end with a haiku because we are getting to AI-generated haiku at this point. And I would like to have my haiku be human-generated. But anyway, golden rays embrace, laughter dances in the air, summer sings with joy. It's a nice late summer sentiment. Okay, with that, we will move on to the Clackamas County Stabilization Center update, presented by Clackamas County Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services, Mary Rumbaugh, and our city manager.
And I should say Mary's the real event. I'm just the color commentary, the cheerleader.
Good to see you, Mary.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been downstairs for a minute.
Okay, what am I pushing?
Yes,
okay.
Or there.
Okay, perfect. Good evening. Thank you so much for having me again. My name is Mary Rumbaugh, and I am the Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services for Clackamas County, and really appreciate taking a few minutes of your time to give you an update on our Clackamas County Stabilization Center. Emma, would you like to say anything?
I'll just say Mary has been a tremendous partner. We've been having bi-weekly calls, the chief and I, and Jason Wax participate in with Mary's team, and it's just really been a wonderful process since you took over the helm, Mary. So thanks so much, and thanks for being here to get the update.
Thank you. And huge kudos to my public and government affairs team for putting together such a nice presentation for me. So wanted just to make sure we level set on really what the Stabilization Center is, and then Encounter, we can also talk about what it isn't. But the Stabilization Center is actually two complementary programs. So mainly you all have been focused on the 23-hour Crisis Stabilization Center, which is a real type of program. So it operates 24/7, 365 days a year. But the individual who comes to our attention can only actually be in the program under sort of rule for up to 23 hours. So the intent of the 23-hour side of the program is really about avoiding unnecessary hospital and jail utilization. So these are individuals coming to the attention of your local law enforcement, your BHU staff, our mobile crisis team, and other law enforcement. So for those individuals across this community experiencing a mental health crisis, the intent is really to bring them to a safe, comfortable, low barrier, low stimulus place where we can do some brief assessment and really understand sort of what led to the crisis in the first place. And then the other side of the program is our housing and case management stabilization program. And that will have a different entryway, although there will be individuals coming to the attention and needing services on the 23-hour side where we determine that they need longer. a little bit of a shorter respite, and they'll get referred over to the housing and case management side. So the two programs are complementary to one another. So as I said, what we're trying to do is really avoid, both law enforcement intervening with these individuals and having to take them to the hospital, which, as you often hear, we don't know really what happens when they get to that emergency room, and often they're just released back to the street or jail. Jail is not the place that we want individuals struggling with mental health and maybe some low substance use challenges to receive their care. So as I was sort of mentioning briefly, the Stabilization Center, some of the services that will be and supports that will be provided is obviously just rest, safety, and hygiene. So they'll be supervised at all times. It's really a low stimulus. If somebody just needs a shower, clean change of clothes, we'll get that for them. And then really the team's going to be assessing what sort of led to that crisis. Are there additional supports or services, or do they just need to be connected to services? And then if they are houseless, we expect a percentage of these individuals to be homeless. We'll also be that provider will be working to connect them to ongoing services and supports. And what we do know about stabilization centers, so I'll be talking in a moment about who our provider is, but what we also know about the crisis stabilization centers, both throughout Oregon and as well as Idaho, is the average length of stay is about 10 to 11 hours for an individual from sort of start to finish. So we're not really talking that many folks are staying for 23 hours. And as I mentioned previously, on the 23-hour stabilization side of the shop, the only reference will be law enforcement and our mobile crisis teams, including, when I say your law enforcement, your BHU staff. So some of the cities like you have behavioral health clinicians embedded with their teams, and then the county also runs a 24/7 mobile crisis response team. Those will be the only reference. There will be no walk-up services. There will never be walk-up services. Over time, we will want to talk about maybe extending it to our crisis line, because then maybe a family member is making that referral. But at this point, it will only be law enforcement and the mobile crisis response team. I appreciate Emma's comment about really the partnership. So we've been really in conversation since 2023, as you all know, and these are actually some recent construction pictures, or it's just really fun to be able to share with you. So this has been a partnership from day one with our sheriff's office, with my department, and really with the city, both with you all as well as our law enforcement, because as you know, the building had previously been used by the sheriff's office for sort of their residential program for folks sort of under their jurisdiction, and the building was really just sitting empty. And so it's been really exciting both to just be able to use an existing building and really bring it to life. And really excited it's going to be literally a brand new building, which is really exciting. And then last November, we issued a request for proposal for the two complementary sides to the program. Claire Vita, which is a program out based in Idaho, running, I believe, 12 both youth and adult stabilization centers. And I do have their program director here with me today. They're running the 23-hour side, and our beloved Father's Heart is running our housing and case management side. You all know them quite well. And we have already engaged with the local businesses around within that perimeter of our location, but we actually will be doing door-to-door support and be reaching out next month with postcards and an opportunity date to be determined for them to tour the facility as well. So as Emma mentioned, we've been meeting by bi-monthly, meaning twice a month, really just to review sort of the progress. So it's both an opportunity for the providers to give some updates. We had some really early good conversations about some of the protocol, including safety protocol, intake, discharge. Clairvita's been very responsive, and your chief has been wonderful about providing some input. Our construction is on track and on budget. We expect to be completed at the end of October with an opening in December, if not just a little bit before that. And we have a tentative, not yet public date to announce of a grand opening in early November. And we would love to include you all. We have added a web page to our county, our Clackamas County page. It's if you Google Stabilization Center, it will come up. And that's been an education tool to really talk about what it is and what it isn't. And there's a really nice FAQ that I think will be a really good guide for community members who are curious about whether their loved one or themselves might need this assistance in the future.
Mary, can I just clarify, because the bullets on here, the opening in December.
Oh, sorry, wrong date.
Okay.
We're not going backwards in history, Emma. Apologies, I did not catch that either. So 2025. Yeah.
And then the November event would be kind of like a soft opening or a ribbon cutting.
It will be a ribbon cutting because I think we'll still be getting hiring done and all of that. So but we expect, so that's sort of why I'm not overcommitting the opening to much more than December, just because, as you all know, workforce is still a challenge and we want to really get it right. But it could be that we do have a soft opening more in that November. But yeah, early November will be the ribbon cutting. Thank you for clarifying that. So I could pause for any questions specific to the Stabilization Center, because the other part of the update that you all asked for was the recovery campus, and that is different and complementary to the work that we're doing. So
I do have a few questions on this. I kind of was going to look at Councilor Massey first, because he was on our team that was part of these discussions. No questions? Okay. Nothing else you think we need to know? Okay. Well, I guess one of the things I thought, it's great that you're doing outreach to the neighbors, but is there actually sort of a written good neighbor agreement? That was sort of where we started.
yeah. Thank you. So we, through conversation, and we're getting close to finalizing it. We really recognize that a good neighbor agreement really generally is because you actually have sort of neighbors. You have sort of the community members. So we've been working collectively to reframe it as really the good partner framework. So really, this is about how we are all going to work together and sort of our individual and collective accountability to the success of this project. So I'm really hoping at this next meeting, August has been tough just with people being out, but my hope is that we're landing this to move it through signature, starting in September.
Okay. The council president wasn't on our council at the time, but the rest of us went to Eugene and visited some of the people from the sheriff's office and visited the center there. Of course, Eugene is a much smaller community than all of Clackamas County. So I'm anticipating that you might be full at times. And what happens when you're full, and how do dispatchers know, and those kind of things?
Yeah, so we'll certainly have the protocol for, again, because the average length of stay is 10 to 11 hours, really the data doesn't bear out that any stabilization center has all. In this case, we'll have 9 recliners, that all 9 recliners are full. Deschutes County is another good example. They only have 5. And since they've been open in 2020, there's never been a situation in which they couldn't accept somebody, because you're sort of wrapping up maybe the care of individual while you're intaking somebody, and there's a separate room for that. So I hope that we're busy, Mary. That's really my hope, but I don't anticipate. Certainly, we will never turn anybody away. We will figure that out. We have sort of space for sort of that private interview room as well.
And so the non-stabilization center side, what do you call it? What did you call it?
Housing and case management stabilization.
Okay. are all of those people, those could come from anywhere?
Correct, and thank you. That was going to be part of my talking points. I get so focused on the 23-hour side. Sorry, Father's Heart. But the housing and stabilization side really is going to be referral through our coordinated housing access line. These are not individuals in immediate crisis like the folks who come to the attention of law enforcement, right? And so there will be more thoughtful, and there are, I believe, 13 sort of beds, for lack of a better term. They're sort of shared rooms on that side. So that will merit that will be some data collection that we'll have to be monitoring, because that may be that we don't have immediate access there, but we're queuing and waitlisting folks who might need that.
Okay. Other questions for folks? No? Okay, I feel like I had one more. Just to be clear, you said law enforcement brings them. What happens when they're done?
So we are working, we have made this commitment to you in this community that they will be transferred. We're looking at various ways to get that transportation back to their home community, and or it could be that they're actually getting referred, to one of our health clinics or our urgent walk-in, that they're, transitioned there. So the Idaho model, they've also addressed transportation. Sometimes it's non-emergencies, secure medical transport. Sometimes we're just going to have to, we're putting them in, a taxi. Sometimes we're going to be looking at a family member being able to transport them. And really, at the end of the day, this is not, that location is, it's not going to be helpful for somebody just to walk out the door. Now, absolutely, this is a voluntary service. It's really important to remind folks of that. So even when law enforcement is transporting, the person has voluntarily agreed that they are coming to this location. If the officer hands them over to Clarvita, they're doing the intake, and the person says, adios, I'm out of here, that will be unfortunate, and there will probably be very little we can do. But our commitment for folks who are intaked is that we will be working to get them back to their home community.
Okay.
Mayor, it sounds like Councilor Stavengers is on Zoom and has her hand raised.
Oh, okay. Councilor Stavengers, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Mary, thank you for being there tonight. Sorry I can't be there in person. And thanks for all your work on this. And thanks to the Milwaukie team that's been moving this forward. So I have a couple questions about, the mayor asked some of my questions around transportation. I just wanted to make sure that is dialed in before the opening date. I know that's like when families are in crisis and individuals are in crisis, it will be really important to have clear procedures around the transportation, what their options are. So I just want to reiterate that. And then my other question has to do with the integration with our behavioral health team. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we'll be adding an FTE to that capacity within the city. And I just want to know what that integration looks like and what other partnerships with other community organizations look like.
So I think I understand the question, so I'm going to answer it based on what I think you're asking, and then you can clarify. So certainly when we talk about law enforcement, behavioral health units, and the mobile crisis team, which is really the Clackamas team, any of those individuals. So for example, you have Glenn here in the room. If Glenn is interacting with a community member and he determines and that individual agrees that being transported to the 23-hour, Glenn absolutely has the same access as a police officer would. And frankly, it would be preferable, because I think, you know, as we all know, this is why you added this role, because it's way less traumatizing than being placed in the back of a police car, right? So that there's that. And then I'm not really quite sure the question about the community partnership, other than what I can speak to is that's part of our provider's role is then to determine who this individual is already connected with. There's a large percentage of folks that that BHUs and mobile interact with who are actually established. They're already established with a provider, and so we just need to get them sort of reconnected. And there are plenty that have never sort of walked through the traditional, you know, connection to community partners, whether it's the county or other community-based organizations. But does that answer your question, or is there another question to that?
In part, I guess, so I'm wondering when folks that are connected with Milwaukie are participating in services, what type of communication happens with our behavioral health team? Will they be notified? Will they be looped in so that they can make sure that it's a known part of the care that's being provided for individuals in crisis?
That's a really great question, and we have not talked about that. We can bring that back to our meeting. It's interesting that you do bring this up, though, Counselor, because we've been having these conversations with the county-based mobile crisis response team, where we do respond to other city jurisdictions who also have BHUs, and whether we're notifying law enforcement that we're in their city. And because we are actually covered under sort of healthcare and HIPAA, we're very limited on what we can actually say. That individual's information, including their address, is actually protected health information. So you bring up a really, really important point around what is the communication or coordination in the sense that this program is right here in your, you know, in your backyard. We're going to have to grapple with this. I also don't want to put undue sort of stress and resources on the city of Milwaukie that doesn't actually need to be placed there necessarily. So you bring up a really great point that we will bring back to our planning group.
And if I might just ask one more question about information sharing, is there potential to be able to, you know, I know early on we were working on an IGA between the city and the county. I assume that, you know, that will be amended to include the provider now that the provider is in place. And I wonder if built into that, and perhaps on an intake form, there could be an information sharing permission that's added, so that, you know, when folks opt into those services, they are approving the ability for the key partners to be communicating with each other, so that we can streamline the type of care and the quality of care that folks receive while they're there and while they transition back to their own community. You know, when I think about moments that people are in acute crisis, they don't always happen in the convenient, you know, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 kind of hours. And having some type of follow-up communication with local jurisdictions across the county who are providing some type of active care for individuals when they're just residing, you know, in the community, not necessarily in acute crisis. I think some of that might be helpful on the front end.
Thanks, Counselor. And we may have mentioned this before you joined the meeting, but we are very close to finalizing it was started as the Good Neighbor Agreement. It's now kind of the Good Partner Agreement. And I think at our next coordination call, we can talk about both this information sharing element and the follow-up piece. But that's the document where we're documenting and sharing our agreed upon protocols for each agency that is a part of making this a success. And I will say, you know, Glenn is on those calls every 2 weeks, both in his Milwaukie capacity and in his loved one Father's Heart capacity. So we are so grateful to have Glenn.
And
Yeah.
if I could also
Likewise.
just add, you actually bring up a point that we are working on at the county around a universal release of information because of all the continuum of services we are creating and recognizing that there are referrals back and forth. So again, it gets a little complicated, like healthcare can easily share. It's a little more challenging to share unless, again, that person signs that release of information. So we are working with our county council to look at a universal release that would be not only applied to this program, but like the recovery campus that I'll be talking about in just a moment.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's definitely worth something, worth looking into. The Sun Service System, just north of us, uses a universal intake form that provides people an opportunity to opt in. And in that process, they provide authorization for information sharing amongst key partners in that network.
Oh.
So that might be something to work, into those conversations.
That's great. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Counselor
Yeah,
Body.
just real quick. So I know you mentioned like if someone wants to leave AMA, for example, against medical advice. But what about peace officer holds? Because I know that there are times where, I used to work at Cedar Hills Hospitals and some police departments would ask if, we would take people in crisis that have been placed on police officer holds because they're a danger to themselves or others. How does that work with the crisis stabilization center? Is that something that the officers are going to have a tool to use in those cases?
They will, and again, that happens even now today, where somebody's brought into our urgent walk-in center, where there's sort of an agreement under that peace officer hold that they're going to be transported to this location, and the person agrees to it, and then that goes away once in this case Claire Vita accepts sort of admission of that person. The state of Oregon right now is still working on the actual rules specific to Clackamas or to crisis stabilization services. So they want them, and they haven't figured out all the rules around it. So that will be actually a clarification point. And I will tell you that Lane County has just opened, or they're in process of opening their stabilization center, and they will be taking voluntary and involuntary. So we're going to probably learn a lot from their lessons learned as well. Ideally, we want the individual to come willingly.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, if no more questions on that, we'll let Mary go on to the recovery campus.
Great, thank you. Well, as you know, back in 2023 as well, the Board of County Commissioners adopted the recovery-oriented system of care model, which is really meeting individuals where they're at. And if we're going to meet individuals where they're at, we actually have to design services to help them. So as much as the Stabilization Center tends to focus more on folks who are in a mental health crisis, although certainly we recognize that those individuals may also be under the influence, it was really important to our board to create an actual recovery campus. So as you know, back in December of last year, we purchased, my department actually purchased property that had been owned by North Clackamas Parks and Rec District. It was the former Clackamas Heights Public Charter School, and it's, I think, 6.6 acres. It's a little over 6 acres with a current building that is not really not usable. Earlier, or last year, also feels like there was a lot of stuff happening last year into this year. We did a notice of funding opportunity, and Fora Health, which is currently a provider of treatment services, including everything from withdrawal management, residential, outpatient services, is now the contractor for that. And so what you actually see on your screen is the initial design. So we've been in contract with them for program and design. The first building, which would be the largest of the two buildings, would be for withdrawal management and residential treatment. And the second building would be for our outpatient and transitional housing. And that's something unique to our campus that other campuses don't have, will be that transitional recovery housing so that folks can really have more time to stabilize. So we're really excited about this design. We still actually have some acreage that is not yet planned for, as well as green space. We do have about an acre of green space that will remain green space, and we're soliciting feedback on how best to use that green space, as we are also soliciting feedback on sort of what phase 2 of the project would look like. And so just a quick update on the timeline. So we've been in design. We are continuing to through the summer, be working with FOR and their construction team around that design. We are in sort of the permitting. This use needs to be, it's not currently sort of permitted for this use, so we're in process for that. And ultimately, we expect to break ground or really start construction summer, pretty much a year from now. I will say we're still, my project manager would appreciate if I would say that we're still dialing for dollars. This is about a $40 million project, and we have about half the money fundraised, but we also have some promising investments we're hoping through Oregon Health Authority and some through some other partnerships. I would also highlight that this also has an updated web page as well on the county site, and again, FAQ, what it is, what it isn't, and we certainly expect it to be complementary to the other programs that are being designed by the county and with partners. I will pause because then there's 2 more things that I wanted to highlight.
So just so I'm clear, could you go back a slide?
Yeah.
So you said there's one building that is, describe what the 2 buildings are, because we can't read that when it's in those blue.
So building
blobs.
1 is withdrawal management, or often what people call detox. Okay. So that often is when somebody is in active use and they need to be medically withdrawn from the substance, and then residential treatment. So some people might just come straight to residential. Some people might start with withdrawal management and transition to residential. Some people may never enter that building at all, and they'll go to building 2, which is outpatient substance use treatment, as well as transitional housing.
And so all of that is being built at once, in one phase?
That is the plan.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Certainly being designed as one build.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like it's a closed campus from this diagram?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Okay. So again, people can leave?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, they are voluntarily here.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Other questions from anyone? Oh, all right.
Okay. We won't spend any time on this because I actually have a nice little packet to give Emma. So we've been really working to really make sure we have some materials that really talk about what we're doing. So these are just 2 examples of some of the really pretty materials that our public and government affairs have done. So this is around what the recovery-oriented system of care is. And then the other one is highlighting our priority investments. And again, I know you can't really see it, but when I talk about the recovery-oriented system of care, the Stabilization Center and Recovery Campus are one of 6 priority investments. We also have Clackamas Village, which we just opened a few months back, transitional housing for some of our homeless community members. We have a caring place that will be breaking ground here soon and is working in partnership with the county and Father's Heart as well. Recovery housing, so we're in process of really selling sort of some of our sorry, I'm losing my words.
Scattered sites.
Exactly, our scattered sites. You actually probably know more about it, the mayor than I do, to really focus on some specialty populations. And then our Lake Road Health Center remodel, and they've continued to provide services, but they should be pretty much out of the remodel here by the end of summer, early fall, and at full capacity. So it's just really important to highlight just the investments that are being made with both county dollars, state and federal dollars to really support the recovery-oriented system of care. So that is the end of my slideshow.
Okay. Do you know offhand, and maybe you don't, it's maybe not a fair question to expect you to know offhand, but SHS funding, which of those get funding out of SHS?
So there's been some funding for the recovery campus, Caring Place, and obviously the scattered sites are sort of, the project under Housing and Community Development.
Okay. And the scattered sites, we had an email exchange about this, but I recently learned that we didn't get the state funding that we had hoped for to create some home ownership opportunities for people.
Right.
You indicated that there's still, you're still using them as residences. There's still some time for another round.
Correct.
Of attempt at the state.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, anybody else have questions? No, I'm not seeing any geese. Okay. Counselor Stavengard? No, I
Hey,
can't.
thanks. Thanks, Mayor. I do have a question. I'm wondering about how the Caring Place, the Recovery Center, and the Stabilization Center will coordinate.
So that's part of why the universal release of information has really come about, is so that we can coordinate. We certainly collectively are talking about our desire for there to be no wrong door. And we recognize that, again, the model of a recovery-oriented system of care is meeting the individual where they're at. So there may be somebody who's houseless, who comes to the attention of Caring Place, and through their support recognizes that this person actually, and maybe the individual discloses they're ready to get into active withdrawal management treatment or residential or, some type of treatment. So there will be a pathway, there will be workflows identified so that there is really hopefully no barriers and that people really move through the system with relative ease.
So thank you. I think that's a wonderful goal. And I also am wondering about some operational pieces, like what will the communicate? Certainly the universal release will help with the communication, but like transportation, as you're having the transportation conversations, are there discussions about like what it looks like when the Caring Place closes down for the day? It's just a day center. So like if someone's in acute trauma or crisis at that point, would they already be kind of queued up to go to the stabilization center? And then let's say that they stay there for the night and they are offered some services. Is there like a communication and transportation pathway that takes them to the recovery center? And like, what do those conversations look like?
We have not even started those conversations, so I appreciate you helping us think through the design. And to be fair to us, the Caring Place and the Recovery Campus we're talking 2027, right? And so right now, there's just so much focus on just getting the funding and getting the buildings built. So there's real opportunity, and we need to start the conversations. But to just be perfectly frank, we have not started those conversations.
I understand there's a lot of pieces moving, and certainly, this is not criticism or like yet another thing to put on your plate. I just think that because of the way that some individuals or some populations may fluidly use all three of those locations, and the way that we can best set up a supportive continuum of care for them to be successful as they use those services, that the more that we can talk about how transportation supports them, how service wraparound supports them, how access to, what they need in the middle of the night is then through case management met at the day center the next day, or things along those lines, then we actually, I think, do a better service to the individuals that we're trying to help.
Agreed. Thank you.
All that's wrapped up in a big, huge thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if nothing else, Emma, nothing from you? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mary, for all the updates.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to see all the work going on, and yeah, we'll watch for our invitations for November.
And thanks to our friends from Claire Vita and Father's Heart for also being here.
Okay, well, with that, I will move on to community comments. And so, yeah, Emma has to sit down because this is the part of the agenda during which council will hear community comments on city business that is not on the agenda. Before we begin, is there any follow-up from the August 5th community comments, Ms. Sager?
Mayor, at the August 5th meeting, no comments were raised, so I don't have anything to follow up there. All the comments that were in your packet are kind of filed under our two hearings for tonight, with the exception of we received one comment from Mr. and Mrs. Elliott that was filed under item RS 8B, which is the public safety fee. But upon reading that comment a little more closely, I think it's a handwritten comment. It's really more about work that these neighbors are doing to maintain their street, clean leaves off of ADA ramps and et cetera. So we're gonna have our public works team reach out to them and discuss their concerns in more detail. But just wanted to flag, if you read that comment and were like, is this related to the public safety fee? I think it might be more broadly about street maintenance. So we're following up on that.
Okay, great, thank you. I think I'm gonna leave these in here because there's several, there's many, it's not just two. So I want a full set whenever, okay. All right, with that, for those in person who wish to speak, please submit a yellow comment card. I have one found on the table on the back side. If you are on Zoom, use the raise hand reaction to alert staff that you wish to speak. And when instructed to, click the microphone button to unmute yourself. If you are telephoning in through Zoom and would like to make a comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. You may also submit a comment via email to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. Before you make your comments, please submit your name and city of residence for the record. As council has other business items on the agenda, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Because information provided during community comments may be new, this is not the time for discussion. The city manager will respond at the next meeting to comments that require follow-up. And so in the room, I have Dylan Cruz for both this and for the housing item later.
All right, there we go. Here. All right, Mayor Beatty, members of council, my name is Dylan Cruz. I'm a resident of Milwaukie. Figured I'd get my money's worth coming out here and add a couple comments to the record. Just a few things for follow-up. Really appreciated the town hall you all did back in July on the middle housing stuff. I think there was a lot of good questions, comments, ideas raised as part of that. And then I know I connected with a number of you afterwards about some ideas and suggestions brought forth on that. So I look forward to connecting with you all on that and thinking about next steps to follow up on a lot of what was discussed there. Beyond that, one of the things that I raised there that I'd be interested to learn more on is related to the tree code and violations and the fees and fines associated with the tree code there. It wasn't clear to me what the size of those amounts were for those fines, but it seemed pretty nominal at the point of discussion and something that was worth a review. And I think as we're seeing some developers be pretty aggressive about what they're trying to do, let's make sure that we strike that balance and retain the canopy cover that we've worked on as part of this. I'm not talking about an individual's home and property, and I know we have to have those nuances. I've got a branch, I got to do something here. I'm talking about clear cutting the lots and just saying, I'll just pay $5,000 and put it in the pot and we're good to go. I think we need to build an amphitheater down on the waterfront. I know that's something that Councilmember Anderson had been working on. Sounds like we got a little bit of a delta and an issue there with the county. And
He's
some
a
things we need to do.
latecomer to this. Don't give him all.
I don't know. Let's digging up some old skeletons here. Some old skeletons. All right, I like this. This is good. A little bit of excitement. Mayor Beatty, this was your idea. This was your baby that you ended with most. But we got to have it. Like, I don't know. Like, I was in Bend. Like, they had the concerts down there, like, on the park. That, like, it's so awesome. Like, so we've got to have that covered space. We could have music here. More people are moving here. It's such a sweet space. Like, we're starting to get there with, like, some gatherings and things. But it would be so money if, like, we actually had a space for that and we could actually recruit some more talent and have people down there. It's such a prime venue and such a unique aspect of the area in the Northwest. So, like, let's just go make those asks. Let's get that Christmas tree bill loaded up. Let's go talk to Rep. Gamba and Senator Taylor. Let's get the money, like whatever we need to do. Let's make it happen. Let's get some sponsorships. Like I'll call some people like KeyBank, whatever. Like, let's do it. Let's call Uncle Phil. He's throwing some money around. Like, let's do it. And then as part of that, like there's all this awesome development going on downtown. Like we've got Freem down there. We've got the food hall going in. We're starting to see new businesses come in as part of this. I think it'd be cool if we thought about like what an entertainment district might look like and any incentives as part of that. Like we need some more restaurants. Like if you had a music venue, if you had some more businesses, there's just a lot of like vacancies, absentee landlords, turnover, stuff like that. Bold idea. People might not love it. You could look at open container rules. Hood River's got it. Cannon Beach has it. I'm not talking New Orleans. I'm not talking Vegas full party, but like I was in Georgia earlier this year, some like old historic districts. You get a closed, container of beverage. You can you go from the food hall to Freem. You kind of check it out, extend it down to Decibel. It's a nice way to out Portland and bring people out. So I know my time's up, but it's a lot of great ideas. And I'd love to follow up with you on this at your leisure. Happy to be a part of it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Dylan. I'd encourage you to go back and check some. We've had many meetings on open containers at this
Yes,
point.
we have.
so-
We just discussed it like
Yeah.
I
last
also
month.
I love that Counselor Anderson takes all the credit for Milwaukie Bay Park design.
Yeah.
Happy to build it.
All right. I don't have any other yellow cards. Do we have anybody online, Ms. Madigan?
We do, but I believe that they're going to be making a comment during one of the public hearings.
Okay. Okay. So if no one else for general community comments, we'll move on. Tonight's consent agenda includes minutes of the City Council July 15th, 2025 regular session and July 16th, 2025 site visit. That has to be the world's shortest consent agenda. I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
All those, it has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. None heard. It passes unanimously. All right. So on to the public hearings. We have two public hearings tonight, and the first one is Affordable Housing Code Incentives Ordinance. The public hearing on the proposed affordable housing incentives is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to hear the staff report, take public comments, deliberate, and consider approving the proposed code changes. Does any council member wish to announce actual or potential conflicts of interest? Seeing none, I will turn it over to Planning Manager Laura Weigel and Senior Planner Vera Colias.
Well, while we're getting ready here, I just wanted to say I'm really excited to be here tonight. We started working on this with you all back in January. We've had we had 3 work sessions with you all, and we went to the Planning Commission. So this has been kind of a long time coming to get to this point. So we're excited to go through this with you all, hopefully this final iteration of it, and get this thing adopted tonight. And with that, okay, so why are we here tonight? It goes back to, and you all have heard this before, but I think there's some folks here that don't know that this code package came straight out of one of our strategies that we developed as part of our housing production strategy that we are required to do by the state. And so we adopted that back in May 2023. And so we've been slowly working on rolling out these implementation strategies. And we had about 8 different strategies in that plan, and we'll continue to bring those ideas and those strategies to you. You'll be working through that over the next couple of years. And this is the first code package that we've brought to you out of that implementation strategy. And it is to evaluate incentives for affordable housing development. So that's what we are here to talk about for the fourth time, I think. So with that, I will hand it over to Vera.
Evening all, thank you. Okay, so the purpose or this package of amendments is a code-based approach to address housing supply and affordability. And the idea was to consolidate all of our code incentives into one code section. So it's a new code section, 19.511. The affordable housing incentives apply to middle housing, mixed-use residential, and multi-unit developments, but it depends on what the incentives are, and I will get to that when we go through the list of the incentives themselves. And again, this code is the result of 3 work sessions with you folks. Starting in January, we had a work session with the Planning Commission, and then we did have our public hearing with the Planning Commission a few weeks ago as well, where they did vote to send a recommendation to approve the package, but I have a detailed slide about, they did make a couple of recommendations to council, and we'll go over that when we get there. Okay. So all of these code incentives relate to qualifying developments. So it's not everybody, you have to be a qualifying development to be able to take advantage of the code incentive package. And there is a sort of tiered system for affordability that we talked about with council. Depending on at the level of affordability, then more units need to be affordable. So as you can see on the slide, if the affordability level is between 60 and 80% of the AMI, then 50% of the units have to hit that affordability target. And then so on down the tiers, so that if you have, for example, less than 30% AMI as your targeted goal for income restricted units, then only 20% of those units need to hit that affordability goal, because the affordability is that income restriction is low. You're really targeting very low income individuals. So we're trying to balance out the number of units with the level of affordability within the development. And if 100% of the dwelling units are at 80%, or below, then there are a couple of little additional incentives increasing by 10 percentage points. So that what we're trying to do is sort of figure out different ways to kind of pull some levers to get more affordable units within these developments as they're using the incentives. Now, continued affordability, couple of slides before we get to the actual incentives themselves. But the application, and again, this is a package of variances. These are adjustments. And so it's structured as a package of variances up to 10 individual requests for variances as one variance application. And as part of all of this, there is a continued affordability requirement for those affordable units that the project has to include within that application, the procedures proposed by the developer to maintain those affordability levels for the units, and that continued affordability for those. And as proposed within this code package, the income restricted rental units would need to be affordable for a minimum of 99 years, and the ownership units at a minimum of 60 years. Part of this was a discussion that came out of council to try to incentivize more home ownership opportunities. So to kind of lower that, the timeline or that time frame for the continued affordability. At the July 22nd Planning Commission hearing, the commission recommended that council align that ownership and the rental timelines to the same 60-year timeframe. So that's a recommendation that the commission.
Can you say more about their reasoning about why we wouldn't want to incentivize ownership?
As part of that discussion, they didn't see a need to have 2 different timeframes, and they really thought that they ought to be the same. So, yeah.
It also, going back and watching that, it seemed like Julie Garvey was saying that from all her work in housing, she was saying that it made sense. Like, a lot of people just have that 60-year standard, and more than anything to align with that 60-year standard, because the 99 felt so kind of separate from what she's seeing on the ground. Yeah. But I think if we want to incentivize homeownership, aside from that extra 100%, 10% bump that we have, we could shorten the timeline of our affordability on homeownership or do other things. But I think her point more was that 99 years was out of step with what she's seeing.
But we heard that number from our assistant city manager, so. Okay, anyway, okay. Thank you.
Okay. So again, the code of incentive package is intended to be a package of variances up to 10. Distinct variances could be asked for as one variance application. Right now, our code allows for up to 3 variances, so the idea was to package 10. And for example, if someone was asking for a side yard setback variance in a couple of different spots, that's 1 variance, it's not 3. So the idea was to be able to provide more opportunities for more variances under 1 application, reduces the application fee, just as another way of packaging up the application piece itself. So here are some of the list of the variances that are in the code package. Side yard setback variance, it's a 40% reduction. That's actually our current type 2 variance right now. So we actually already have that as one of our lists of our type 2 variances, for example. And then our front and rear setbacks, 25% reduction. That gets bumped from middle housing. So we wanted to increase that as part of a middle housing affordable development. There is a reduction proposed for common area or landscaping or open space as part of the development of 25%, but the development would still need to meet the tree code. So there are, a few, even if the green space is reduced, they still do need to meet the tree code. So this incentive package does not touch the tree code. Those requirements are still need to be met as part of the residential development. And you can see on the list, minimum lot area, lot width and depth, maximum lot coverage, has a bump as well. And then building height of 1 story or 20-foot increase. And I know we got some comments about building height as being a concern from folks that were sent into OCR. I just want to reiterate or make clear that height increase only relates to mixed-use developments and multifamily or multi-unit residential developments. So that would not apply to middle housing. So it would not apply to cottage cluster, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, or townhouses. So that building height increase would only be for mixed-use developments in our mixed-use zones or in our downtown, and then multifamily or multi-unit residential developments in our high-density residential zones. So I just wanted to make that clear. I'm obviously here to answer any questions if that's not clear to folks, but I wanted to make sure that that was something we talked about. And then in the downtown, there's language that talks about the height bonus being in addition to already allowable height bonuses. So the idea being that we can stack some extra height in our city center core in our downtown. So again, trying to incentivize additional units being able to be built over and above what the code would already allow. Okay. Continuing on, bike parking. So there is an incentive or an allowance to reduce the number of bike parking spaces and or the location of where those are. This was something that I know that came out of, there was quite a bit of discussion, I know, in the city of Portland about bike parking and how to accommodate that, particularly in multi-unit residential or mixed-use developments, setting aside separate rooms, racks, that sort of thing takes up space of residential units. So it was something that we offered up as one of the incentives as part of this package as well. Again, that maximum building height, except for cottage clusters and for middle housing. There is no maximum density, again, where it's not about the number of units, it's about the box or that, that Jell-O mold that we're talking about. And then there's also some discussion about how the development works in the downtown. So right now in our code south of Scott Street on Main Street, you are not allowed to have ground floor residential on Main Street. The package would allow for ground floor residential on Main Street south of Scott Street, as well as the ground floor non-residential support uses, amenity spaces and so on, those would all be allowed on that first floor. And then for townhouse development, right now our code allows for 4 townhouses in a row before you have to have a break, and then 4 more. The code package increased or suggested that we increase that to 6. In that discussion at the Planning Commission, the recommendation within their vote was rather than have a number of units, that it should be a distance. And so 200 linear feet. So that way we're not talking about how many townhouses, we're just talking about the block length or the amount of space that they take up. So if someone were building narrower townhouses, you could get more, but it would still take up the same amount of space. Because townhouses generally can be as small as 12 to 15 feet wide, or, they could be 25 feet wide. So it's really not about the number of units, it's about the streetscape experience, which is kind of what we were talking about in the code anyway. So rather, that way we're not restricting the number of units, we're talking about how much space they take up on a city block. So that was the recommendation from the Planning Commission. And then in the downtown right now, since the downtown code was rewritten, multi-unit development in the downtown used to be reviewed under the multi-unit design standards. And then that got switched, and now multi-unit developments are reviewed against the downtown design standards, which have some more, I would say more strict or more requirements for the design. The idea with the code package is to pull that back and allow the multi-unit developments in the downtown to be reviewed against the multi-unit design standards rather than the downtown design standards.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
that means allow them lesser review. I mean, not,
they don't have the same design standard requirements.
okay.
Yeah,
Is that in this package?
yes.
Oh, okay.
That's not new. That's been in the package,
The
sort
whole
of
thing.
consistently. Yeah.
Okay. Council
sorry.
President, do you
So
have a
sorry.
question?
Yeah, I didn't realize we were doing questions. Can you go back one slide to just clarify this? We've gotten a lot of, you spoke to the emails that we've gotten about the height increases.
Yes.
And how that doesn't apply to neighborhoods necessarily. Can you, I'm trying to square, because I have said to residents, the reduction in open space does not impact our tree code, which I believe, because I've heard that here. But I also kind of want to understand a little bit more about what that means, because I know that we're hearing, we don't want to lose green space or tree canopy goals. I want to make sure that we're staying true to that.
Well, I think, you know, what our code is independent of the tree code. So our code, if we didn't have a tree code, you're allowed this 25% reduction. But we do have a tree code. So even though we're allowing a 25% reduction in green space, you still have to accommodate the required tree plantings. So you may not be able to reduce the full reduction in open space because you need to be able to accommodate the tree canopy that you're required to plant. You also have to have the right planting area, that compaction zone. The tree code is not just about a tree, it's about the soil and the compaction during construction. And you have to post a bond, you know, and that tree has to stay alive for several years after. So there are a lot of requirements about the tree planting standards that may not allow you to actually reduce your open space as much as this code would allow. They go together, just like all of our codes. We allow people to do less, but you still have to accommodate this code over here. So you may not be able to get that.
So to clarify, to understand this better,
Yeah.
we might see less landscaping that's not trees, but we would still see the amount of like tree
Correct.
landscaping.
You still have to have that hit that 40% canopy.
Correct,
Okay.
that's right.
And then an example, I'm trying to think of not landscaping that would still have a tree over it. This would be like you have a parking space with a tree in the middle of it. That
Yep,
would
it
count
could be
towards
in
your
the
tree.
aisle, you know, if you had a parking area and there was a planted area in the parking lot, might
Okay.
have shade trees in it, but they still need to be wide enough to accommodate the size of the tree that they're planting. So, yeah.
And the way canopy is calculated is its diameter, it's diameter or breast height of a certain maturity of the
It's-
tree.
yeah,
So it's, you know, you're shrinking the amount of open space, you gotta maybe plant a couple Oregon white oaks that are gonna be large and meet that
In 100 years.
circumference in 100 years. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Vera, I just have one clarification question.
Yes.
I'm trying to square what you've got on this slide, building height, the 1 story, 20 feet, MU and MFR only. And then
Yes.
if you go to the next
Yep,
slide,
and it's an error in the chart.
okay, there we go.
Yes, sorry about that.
No worries. So
You
this
think
is.
that how many times I've seen this presentation and I would have caught that by now, but
No
no.
worries,
it's-
but
yes.
so this is the right point.
Yes,
is that
it's very
a 1 story or 20-foot increase, but that only applies in mixed use and
Yes,
multifamily.
yes. Yeah. Okay. And then the final list of variants are the design standards. So this would allow for a full adjustment to our facade articulation standards. That's both for that would be for middle housing, as well as the, any of the facade articulation standards that are for mixed use and for the multi-unit residential.
I didn't
Yes.
understand that. I had circled that in my print. What do you mean by full adjustment?
That you don't need to meet any of the facade articulation standards.
Oh,
Yeah,
Okay.
because, and the reason for, and the planning commission had some questions about that as well after the work session. The challenge is that the articulation standards, well, they do increase construction costs. You know, the more you have to kind of do to a building, makes it more challenging for a project to pencil out. The challenge though is that facade articulation standards aren't math. There aren't numbers. It's things that you have to do. You have to have, you know, a part of the facade needs to, you need to have a 2-foot separate, you know, piece between the front wall and a setback and a step back or something like that. So it's very difficult to create an incentive of, well, you get a 10% reduction in the facade articulation standards. That's not the kind of standard it is. So we try to figure out a way, is there a math way to kind of create that, or you only have to meet one or two? If that's the articulation standards tell you, here are the ways to meet the standard as opposed to telling you what you have to do. And so to create any kind of a percentage decrease or something like that really doesn't work for those standards. I might add that Senate Bill 1537, the variance package that came out of the Senate bill, the city was approved for the exemption that we requested, but for those items where we don't, or those areas where we don't have a variance option, which in fact is the downtown, the DMU, we don't have a variance for those standards. And the way that legislation is written, facade articulation, it's a full adjustment. That's actually how the Senate bill is written as well, because it's generally not a mathematical kind of standard that you can just reduce by a percentage. So I'm not saying that just as a way of kind of clarifying that it's a very difficult standard to try to incentivize without saying you don't have to meet it. There was a lot of discussion at the Planning Commission about this in particular as well, from a design standpoint too.
Well, and I have to say, just from a linguistic standpoint, full adjustment doesn't mean what you just said to me. The word exemption means what you just said to me.
Okay, and we can make the rewriting.
Full adjustment sounds like, I don't know.
I've been reading the Senate bill for a year and a half now, and so that's just how I talk now, so I apologize for that. I do, Counselor, yes, I do, thank you. I agree. Another, and we'll make the change. I'll rewrite that. I'm sorry, do you have another question before? Okay. The 3 detailed design standards rather than 5. So for middle housing, for any of the street facing facades, you have to meet, you have to choose from a menu and have at least 5 of the detailed design items. The incentive is to only have to meet 3. And that there's a whole, I think there are 12 or 15 of those items. So that the incentive is to only need to have 3 of those rather than the full 5. Councilor Massey.
So was there any discussion in the Planning Commission, again, back to the facade articulation, about just requiring it? Because it either seems to be a yes or no.
Yes.
So was there any discussion about keeping the facade articulation so that you'd sort of avoid the blank wall?
There was discussion at the end, and there were a couple of commissioners that really wanted to emphasize good design and really wanted to still require that. At the end of the day, the vote allowed for the package itself, but there was quite a bit of discussion about this. Yes, particularly at the work session was when we really got into the details about that.
Yeah, I just, I understand the goals we're trying to get to here, but at the same time, I think we might be sacrificing something.
Yeah, let's not get into deliberation, but yeah.
Noted. It's a question.
Put a pin in that, and we'll come back to that.
Okay. And then finally, the total window area, the glazing area, the variance or the adjustment is up to 30%, but there would still be a minimum of 12% required for the glazing for the window area. Okay. The approval criteria, again, this is it's a type 2 review, and the land use application would still have to meet the findings. We would still be writing findings. And so that would need to relate to the type 2 approval criteria related to impacts, any mitigation to any identified impacts, that there are provisions to guarantee that the dwelling units will remain affordable in the future. So that's that continued affordability piece. And then there is, for an eligible development, that the income restricted units are to be dispersed throughout the development. So they would need to show as part of their application package how they are accommodating that, how they are dispersing those units throughout the development itself. The review process that we are proposing is an expedited type 2 review, which is 100 days instead of the typical 120 days for a standard type 2 review. But it would still have all of the type 2 pieces of public notice and all of that. So that's not changing. It's just kind of streamlining, tightening up that 120-day review down to the 100 review. And we already have the expedited type 2 review within our code, so we would be applying that process to these applications. And then as a general understanding that these developments would get priority processing by all of the city departments for permitting and inspections and that sort of thing.
Did we end the legislative session without a mandate for a quicker review than 100 days? I thought we had some shorter review period. That did not end up getting passed.
Senate Bill 974. Yeah.
That was for engineering.
Engineering reviews.
Okay, okay, got it.
Senate Bill 974, I think, was that. That was the.
Can
Council
I
President?
clarify? You say we already have the expedited type 2 review in our code. What else do we apply that to?
So there is state law that talks very specifically about a certain kind of affordable housing project. So that's already in state law that gets that expedited review because we're sort of creating our own sort of affordable project. We're applying that expedite. We haven't had anyone do it yet, but there's statute that talks about having this expedited review for affordable housing developments, but they are a certain description of what kind of affordable housing development. So we're just reiterating that this would fall under that same category for that expedited review.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Again, the Planning Commission, at their July 22nd hearing, they voted 3-1 to recommend approval with the two recommendations that I mentioned earlier. One, that the ownership and rental developments have that same 60-year affordability, and that townhouses be permitted for a linear length of 200 feet rather than, the number of townhouses at 6. So it's actually quite comparable distance, the 200 feet, but it gives a little more flexibility to the number of units. So it's actually a very good suggestion, I thought, from the commission. Happy to answer any questions.
So I have a kind of wonky language question, but at the bottom of RS 30, you talk about our housing developments that are blah, 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 low-income households as defined by the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, as 80% AMI or below. First of all, 80% AMI is our median income, so I don't think that actually qualifies as low income. Because it is 80%, Milwaukee's median income is about 80% of AMI. But I'm just curious as to why you mentioned HUD here, but you haven't mentioned HUD up front where you've given us the other criteria.
I will make that consistent.
Okay.
It wasn't on purpose.
Okay.
It was
Okay,
me writing it
Okay.
over many, many days and not carrying that over. So I will make that
okay,
consistent.
okay. Other questions?
Could you just explain again, what the planning commission's thought process was behind the 60-year?
Yeah.
form?
So one of our commissioners, Julie Garvey, works in the affordable housing arena as her regular job. And as Council President Anderson spoke, she had questions and concerns about the 99 years. I think that's not a timeframe that she had worked with before. So that was something that kind of alerted her to that. But then there was also discussion about, we explained that, council wanted to incentivize homeownership, and gave that the lower number. But at the end of the day, the commission thought that they should be the same, that their rental or affordable housing is valuable either way. And that they didn't see a need to kind of shorten that time frame to incentivize ownership over the rental. So they wanted them to be consistent.
Was there specific reasoning why they didn't go with the higher years?
Again, I
Just
think,
'cause they didn't see that,
I
they've seen it
think
before?
Commissioner Garvey's discussion about 99 years being something that she wasn't very familiar with. She thought that 60 years was the much more standard time frame, was something that they continued with. So, yeah. And if I,
Interesting.
yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Okay, other questions? Counselor Stavanger, did you have any questions before we go to public comment?
Nope, no questions here. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay. Have we received any additional correspondence? So we had some things trickle in today. I'm not even sure we've seen the last because we were in meetings starting at 4. So can somebody list what,
Well, I'll list the ones you've got on my sheet, Nicole, and you can tell me what I missed. We had 4 items of correspondence. I'm just going to read the last names of the folks who submitted these: Smith, Haley, Reynolds, McManus, and Perry. Are there any others
There were no
Nicole?
others, yeah, that's
So
everything.
all of those have been transmitted to you.
And Cruz, right? I think we got one from.
I think McManus is the same as Cruz.
Okay. All right, so that's it, just the 4. Okay. Well, I did see them all. Okay. All right. Okay, now we'll do public testimony. So I don't know if you guys want to stay there or you want to step back. Does anyone wish to comment on the affordable housing incentives? I have at least 2. The council will now take public testimony on the proposed changes. I will recognize speakers and any questions should be addressed through me. When you begin to speak, state your name and city of residence for the record. For those in person who wish to speak, please submit a yellow comment card. If you are on Zoom, please use the raise hand reaction to alert staff that you wish to speak. And when instructed to begin, click the microphone option to unmute yourself. If you are calling in through Zoom and would like to make a comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. You may also submit a comment via email to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. Presentation times for all speakers will be limited. Representatives of groups will be limited to 10 minutes. Individuals will be limited to 3 minutes. Please confine your remarks to the proposed action and package before us. Avoid repetition and irrelevant information. So, Dylan had submitted first, so I'll call on Dylan Cruz.
Thanks, Mayor Betty, members of council. For the record, my name is Dylan Cruz. I'm a resident of Milwaukie. Appreciate your time on this. It's a lot to digest, so I appreciate the questions and helping us to walk through it. So some concerns that I want to express and things to think about. I mean, we're talking about 10 variances in a single project here. Reductions in minimum setbacks, reductions in open space and landscaping, reductions in minimum lot area, width, depth, reductions in required bike parking, maximum lot coverage increased, up to 20 additional feet in certain areas, facade articulation, reduced window area. Like you all have come by and seen that Harrison Street project next to us, right? I know that's middle housing. We're talking about affordable housing, but it still extends to middle housing. And I've heard comments from people broadly on council, electeds, community members, and have just commented on how problematic that project is. I'm not talking about the developer. I'm talking about the aesthetics, the visual aspects of it, the spacing on it, and saying, this really isn't where we want to be going on this. My concern is that we're taking what we've seen there as an example and you're inflating it further. You're doubling down on it, you're expanding it even more. So you're going to see more projects like that. I think that's concerning. And now I've seen some of the images that have been shared to say, hey, this is what it could look like. But I do think we're kind of cherry picking those units and what we're looking at. Again, the concern that I've had about this has been these detached units that we're seeing. They're a different animal. We don't understand them, what they sell for, how you lend on them, how you borrow, how many you can squeeze in, how this works when you start pushing all these units closer and closer and against fences and reduced vegetation. You're just building these blocks with no character and aesthetics at all. You want quality units, not just affordable, right? I read the resolution. There's no details on how the enforcement works. There's no details on the penalties for violations. I know we're saying that people will handle this and take care of it. We should articulate that because to me, this is just like a good faith, like this will be fine. Don't worry about it, right? And again, all of the timeline requirements on this can be changed by a resolution from the future city council. So we're giving a lot up to the future and trust, right? I'll also say, I mean, you just look at everything that we've done here. HB 2001 is already the most progressive, legislation in the nation. We just passed HB 2138 to make middle housing easier. HB 3031, housing infrastructure, 2258, SB 684, HB 3145. Like the ink is still wet on those bills and what they do and all the incentives we're increasing, right? So that's in addition to all the money we're paying for bonding and investments. And I know that we need more of it, but I guess my ask to you are 2 things from my perspectives. I think we need to kind of wait and see what the market looks like on some of these units and what the intervention point is, and then decide kind of what you want to do before you're diving in. We're not even seeing the first flush of these projects being developed and sold yet before we know where we're going in. Lisa made a great point about that. Like, what is the AMI? Like, what are these going to sell for? Like, what does this look like? I don't know what we're looking at yet. And then my specific request for you, like, I'm imploring you, we need more explicit language to prohibit the height increases on middle housing. I know we're saying, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's not in your area. But again, this stuff changes. Like, it's constantly changing here. And I know I'm over here, but I mean, look how many changes we're making right now, right? We can't even keep track of what we've done. We're asking these questions. You got to have a degree in planning. You got to be up at night reading these bills to kind of understand what's going on here. So I'm just thinking about those loopholes, those unintended consequences, how they're exploited, how we work them, and just saying, let's be a little bit more explicit and clear about this before we dive in and start permitting this out the gate with so many compounding, options in front of us right now. So I appreciate your consideration on that. Happy to talk further.
Thank you. And Allison Cruz McManus.
So a lot of you know me from council meetings, working in the neighborhood. I'll make sure I try to not reiterate a bunch of the same ideas Dylan's already given you, but one thing I want to let you know about myself is I'm actually a data scientist that's responsible for fighting fraud at a large financial tech company. So it's my job every day to look at projects and proposals and think about all the ways that bad actors are going to exploit that. And that's the thing I'm most concerned about. Like, I know we have a need for affordable housing, but let's just do it the most responsible, safe way possible, that we don't take down the character of the city that we live in already. So a huge concern of mine are just what are the enforcement mechanisms? Like, we're going to let the developers come in with the plan on like what it is that we're going to keep these affordable for 60 years. That seems very optimistic. I am particularly concerned about the ownership type of situations. So if we took the Harrison development, which we live across the street from, if the developer Alec had decided to make one of each of the 4 quadplexes affordable, now they apply to every rule, and those units are set to be sold. So is he the person who's going to enforce 15 years from now, the person that bought that unit, that they sell it to someone who also meets the AMI at 80% and all of that good stuff? That doesn't make any sense. So like, what is the true enforcement mechanism, and what are the fines for violating those? If it's $5,000, like the tree code, we found out it's like $4,000, you can kind of do whatever you want. That's a big problem. So like, what are the repercussions? Do you go to jail? Is it a $5,000 fine? Like, what are those things? That's not written down anywhere in here. And that's really concerning, because we do need mechanisms to hold people accountable. And I think we all think about this as like, oh, a nonprofit's going to come in with a big grant, we're going to do this, and it's going to be held by the nonprofit for a long time. That's just not always going to be the case. And as we've seen with Harrison Avenue, the developer has done every single thing to code. And multiple times from many different people in elected positions, I've heard this isn't what we meant. And I think we just really need to think about like, how do we make sure that doesn't happen again? And the same thing with some of the setbacks and variances. If we were in a situation where one of each of those 4 plexes, which are detached, has made affordable, we're now looking at each of those detached plexes being 3.5 feet away from each other. Like, you can't take out the trash. So I would also implore maybe looking into different variances for detached versus attached. So Will, you sent me a nice mock-up of what the townhomes up the street, they could have been bigger if they had, done this. And that's where I just think the detached versus detached kind of comes into play. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all the cards I have for people in the room. I think Nicole might have someone online.
We do have someone online with their hand raised.
Okay. So please unmute yourself. Nicole will add you to the room, to the, whatever we call you, panelist, to make you able to speak.
Yeah, you should be able to go ahead and speak now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I'm Heather Buchanan. I don't know if it shows on there. I'm right across the street from Allison and Dylan. And yeah, I share a lot of similar concerns. I think the ones that concern me the most are the potential side yard setbacks, especially since 5 feet already isn't a lot, and to potentially allow a 55-foot building to be built 3 feet away from an existing house. Just seems like a lot, like right up close. But I do really appreciate the emphasis on affordability. I really like the like prioritization in the permitting process. Yeah, just kind of to go along with what Dylan and Allison have pointed out. I really would urge the city to consider what someone with the worst intentions might do with this, because I think a lot of the rules and everything kind of take a rosy view of what people might do, which would be great if people did it, but allowing the codes would allow someone who only cares about their bottom line to go to the maximum extent allowable without many things that a city could do to prevent it if it wasn't going necessarily the way that people had envisioned. So I just kind of have some cautions around that, especially around the side yard requirements. And then the height. I know the height is currently only for mixed use and I think multi-unit. But I do know, not to call out Council President Anderson again, but I also agree with him in really wanting more mixed-use development within different neighborhoods and having that be a priority in zoning. So I would be concerned if it was, even if it was just mixed use in that and it wouldn't affect neighborhoods yet, if there was more mixed use available throughout the city of Milwaukee, it could allow very tall buildings very close to, you know, single-family homes, kind of dwarfing them and leaving them in the shadows. And so that would just be my comments that I would like to give.
Thank you. Thank you for calling in. Ms. Madigan, anyone else?
We have one other person on Zoom, but do not have a hand raised.
Hand raised, okay. All right, so I'm looking around the room. I guess that's all of the public comment. Does staff have any response to the testimony?
Mayor, Council, Joseph Brilio, Assistant City Manager. I'll just want to hit on a few things. Actually, these are great comments from both Heather and the Cruz family. These are actually also comments of why, when we first started, I don't know if you remember, especially the enforcement, the verification requirements, that was a big part of this discussion. And when we started, it was offering affordable housing incentive to almost anybody that wanted to try to do it. And we've now, since where we are today, is if you, for rental units, you're essentially going to have to be a big property. You're going to have to be a multifamily or mixed use development. Those are to get the incentives. Those are going to be managed by a property owner. And the way that we have it set up right now with the 99 years and 60 years even for those are long-term investments that are usually done by affordable housing developers particularly. So I say all this because the way we framed it is actually very specific to people that do this. I know that probably doesn't give our community enough assurance, but there's that piece. They do have on the home ownership side, those all have to be under a land trust model. We do not allow just a developer to come in and do one unit the way the code is written today. And so we've tried to account for these items because we do care about those affordability terms actually meaning something from 60 to 99 years. So that's the reason why we got to where we are today, is because we actually have been talking about those parts. If there's any questions about that more, happy to answer it. And also would say that if the concern comes down to middle housing being a part of this code, then I would just I want to just throw it out there right now and maybe help with the conversation. Then we could also entertain the idea of just being to mixed use and multifamily as well.
And just if you're following along at home or in your packet, it would be on RS 31. It's that section D about continued affordability, which speaks to what Joseph just said. It's what we'd be looking for in those, agreements and legal proof of restriction affordability covenant that the city would require as part of that piece of continued affordability.
Yeah.
So just to
Thanks.
make sure I understand what you were saying, Joseph. So, I mean, we all know, Hillside or Northwest Housing Alternatives, there are nonprofits that do this. But if somebody came in and wanted to build a fourplex and make one affordable, they couldn't, and they're a private developer.
Yeah.
there's no mechanism for them to do the affordability covenants. There's not another agency that would take ownership or would do that for them, or there could be?
There could be. Yeah,
Okay.
there could be.
Okay.
And so at any moment, any developer or property owner wants to pursue these incentives, they have to get a deed restriction on those units or that unit. And then also assure some kind of regulatory requirement as far as the management authority. So yes, you could give that unit to a nonprofit or to the housing authority per se, or a land trust. Also, there are options out there. They don't have to own it and manage it.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
And so, yeah, that answered my question. And then, since you're here, you were the kind of where we came up with the 99 years. So
yeah,
you want
happy to talk
to
about that. Yes. So Commissioner Garvey is correct that 60 years is the typical and the standard. What I mentioned in the other meetings is that 99 is kind of the more, is becoming more commonplace and happening more often throughout the United States. I actually do believe, I thought Portland was using it, the 99-year term. That's one of our closest, but I know some other states are also using 99 years. And the federal government was also considering 99 years as part of their low-income tax credit.
Okay.
So that's where I got that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Council President?
Yeah, I really, have to say I've enjoyed, the fun thing about middle housing and stuff going wrong is I've got to meet some neighbors and get to know some familiar faces. So it's fun to see you back again, even under these sad circumstances. The questions that I have here are kind of taking what some of the neighbors have raised. Let's say there's a developer, maybe they've already developed in Milwaukie, and they come in and they say, I'm gonna build affordable units that will be for home ownership. They build the units with all of our variances, and then they change and they try and sell them on the private market. What happens, or like, how do we guarantee that they aren't able to do that?
That's real estate law. I mean, I'd look to our city attorney to also help with this question, but that deed restriction would be contested in court.
You wouldn't, I mean, would you typically, I guess a piggyback, would you typically get a deed restriction up front before, at the time of permits? Or is that something that happens
Yes.
at occupancy?
Good question. So typically, the confirmation is you ask for it as part of the condition in the land use process, and then they provide the recorded document prior to C of O. That's typically how it works. So
Okay.
before anyone can move into the home, you have to show the recorded instrument.
And if they hadn't, I guess this is what I don't understand, and maybe the lawyer can speak to. If they hadn't, they agreed to do this affordable project. Before receipt of occupancy, they change their mind and try and pull back on us. What is the legal remedy, or what does that look like?
They don't meet the conditions of approval for their project.
Yeah.
There are some levers that we can pull.
I would probably surmise that would be a rare occurrence, but if somebody were to pull permits to build an affordable housing, a unit allowed under this code, and then they build it, and before they get their certificate of occupancy, they decide they don't want to do the affordability part, they will have built a project that's not inconsistent with their permitting. And so it would just resort to our normal enforcement mechanisms. They won't get their certificate, certificate of occupancy for the property until that is recorded and taken care of. I'm not sure if that was your question. Or
I guess, what does that imply then if they don't get their certificate of occupancy?
nobody can live in the units. They don't get their final approval.
Okay.
And they don't have, because they will have received permits that are of a certain color, right? They have to do certain things. They won't have a case to go to court and force us to give them their certificate of occupancy because they haven't met the terms of their deal with the city.
This is striking in my mind some similarity to the considerations that led to Rep. Gamba's bill about SDC deferrals and creating a fund to backfill cities if people, stiff them on their SDCs. The truth is, if there's a nice, development out there and we're not letting someone, we or the future council in 15 years are not letting someone move in and occupy, given the housing need, that's going to be a really hard position to be in as the city. To like say, oh yeah, there's some beautiful housing there, but you can't occupy it. We're going to keep you from occupying it. I mean, I just see there being some struggle, potential for struggles.
But what developer would do that and want to lose money? Like
I would
they're all
think
about
that-
making money, so.
I would think that that would be a rather rare circumstance, that somebody were to pull permits and go through this entire process and then build the units all out, ready to go, and then fault on the last piece to get their certificate of occupancy. Certainly stranger things have happened, but I think these code amendment, or this code package is specifically tailored to affordable housing developments. I don't think you're going to get very many just one-off developers who are going to come in and take advantage of this system. I don't think most affordable housing developers are developing affordable housing to make a large profit.
I do, though, want to emphasize what the commenters brought up, that there is an ongoing enforcement piece of this. And going back to Joseph, how Joseph opened up our work session a couple times ago, we don't want to hide that this, anytime we implement this stuff, we are implementing mechanisms of our follow-up. I think that the team has done the best we can on, putting in language that would provide that certainty up front. But I think the council president was actually asking, what if you get a certificate of occupancy? People live in it for 10 years and then they sell it on the private market. I think that would take, but I still think it would take some enforcement capacity for us to follow up on that. So I want to be transparent that is true. This is why I'm moving code enforcement into community development, because I think this is frankly the future of our code enforcement focus, is this kind of follow-up.
And I guess, can I clarify, or maybe just ask this question? We've heard from community members who are worried that our enforcement doesn't have teeth and people are going to violate this. And I've heard from you all today that maybe you don't think that will happen. Is it like, do you think that this has sufficient teeth to prevent developers from abusing this code?
I guess my opinion, and I'd welcome my staff to offer theirs, is I don't think it's that our code lacks teeth. I think it's that this takes capacity. And the code system is also not perfect or snap your fingers and it's done. There's due process, there's notices, there's the court process. So I think our process has teeth. I think I have 2 code enforcement staff, and we're seeing a lot of development.
Yeah, this is actually less a code enforcement issue in my opinion. This is a real estate law issue that it will come down to when it comes to enforcement or someone being nefarious, as you're suggesting, Council President. I will say, as the code is written, in my experience, and I can be certainly wrong because I'm aging and have experience, is that I don't know that I don't believe many developers will take up this code package as an incentive that aren't in the business of doing this. That's my projection, my forecast, but that's, if it's of any help.
Yeah, if it's okay to turn to another topic, Heather mentioned Heather, I love that you're following along to the harebrained ideas that I have, and I really do like the idea of expanding the amount of SMU designations that we have in the city. At the same time, I think Heather raised an interesting concern where could we see a height bonus applied to SMU? My understanding was that SMU was not eligible for height bonuses. Is that only our previous height bonuses that we had? Would that apply to this one? Because I know that other height bonuses that we've added to our code are not, SMU is not eligible. Is that the same case here?
So the way so there are not, in our base code right now, there are not height bonuses in the SMU like there is on the general mixed use zone or the neighborhood mixed use zone. The way this code is written is that it's in 2 parts. The maximum building height applies to multi-unit and mixed use residential developments. And it's in the downtown mixed use zone and the general mixed use zone. So in the DMU and the GMU. So it's that's how it was intended to be written, was that it was in the GMU and the DMU zones, not in the neighborhood mixed use zone and not in the SMU zone. But I can make that very clear in the code that that was the intent, if that's,
I think
all everyone's understanding, I guess.
I've heard from other folks who might be sitting in this room that like there is it's important that we treat our downtown and our town center differently than our neighborhoods. And we only have our GMU and our town center anyways, but making that really clear, I think will be really important. Because I do think the conditions in our downtown and the type of growth that we want to see in our downtown is very different than out in our neighborhoods. And I also, as someone who wants to see more SMU designations across the city, I also think that it's important that SMU is still palatable to neighbors. When you have mixed use development, it doesn't have to mean you have a 10-story behemoth next to you. You can have something that is neighborhood scale.
We got a late breaking public comment, so I guess we haven't actually closed public comment, so I guess I'll let him comment. So Bernie, you have 3 minutes.
Bernie Stout, Milwaukie resident, prior Clackamas County permit specialist. And I think what I'm bringing is up relevant. Saw over a half a dozen 12-bedroom houses, 14 bathrooms get built. And the very next day, they went in and put in a change of order, change of use. And they got it. And this happened a half a dozen times all over Clackamas County. What they were doing was usurping the ADA requirements and fire sprinklers. You know, to them it was big money. To me, I wouldn't want my relatives, because they were turning them into convalescent centers. I wouldn't want my relatives in those buildings, but it was legal. So I'm just throwing that out as an example of what you guys are talking about. There are people that do it, and that to me is big money.
Thank you. I think that's a good example of gamesmanship that, you know, I think we do worry about. Okay. Other questions for staff before we close public testimony and go to deliberation? Oh, yes. Okay.
I told Robert I wouldn't be a noisy goose, but then we got a lot of public comment. The last thing that I kind of want to understand is how this applies to detached units, and especially what Allison was mentioning around detached quads. The setbacks, does that apply internally to the units? Allison mentioned that you could have a 3-foot setback between units, and my thought was, or my understanding at least, was that it was just from the side. How does that look, or explain to me a little bit more there, because I think that that's an important concern.
Yeah, the side yard setbacks are the perimeter, or the setbacks are the perimeter setbacks. It's the relationship of the structure to the property line. The interior is the spacing, and we haven't changed that. There is actually code language for detached units have to be a minimum of 6 feet apart. It's actually a building code requirement as well, based on fire separation and so on. So we haven't changed the interior separation of detached units. So the setbacks and the variances that we're talking about here are all about the perimeter, the relationship of the building to the property line. It's not the interior spacing, no.
So if we're going to create waivers or reductions, allow reductions in lot coverage or increases in lot coverage and reductions in green space, they would still be subject to that 6-foot minimum spacing between. Okay.
It's a different standard and it's still in the code. So yes.
And it's also a building requirement.
You mean state building code? Okay. Other questions for staff before we close public testimony? Okay, if there are no other questions, I will entertain a motion to close the public comment part of the hearing.
Move to close the public comment part of the hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public comment part of the Affordable Housing Code Incentives hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. The public comment part of the hearing is closed. Is there any council discussion? Who wants to start? Well, I will just say I appreciated Joseph's preemptive statement because it is what I've been thinking all day long, which is I'm fine with the changes to the DMU and the GMU, but the Planning Commission had this hearing a week before the middle housing town hall. I don't know how many planning commissioners watched that, but I don't know if it would have changed their view, but it definitely changed my view. And I feel like we really need to, I'm not willing to give any reductions on green space or give any increases on lot coverage, because I think what we're seeing in town is quite a shocker to me as someone who was part of considering the first, the initial package. I really thought cottage clusters had to have more of a usable communal space. I see a lot of mix in what we're seeing in terms of how far out, what the front yard setback is on some of these, and allowing even more, more permissive, lessening of those setbacks really gives me concern. I think we probably do need to have a conversation about some of our middle housing standards after the town hall. But anyway, that's kind of where I am. I'm okay with what we say in here about the mixed use zones, but there's a lot of the rest of it that gives me heartburn.
So just an observation is that this is not new. And I would highlight, because Laura and Adam were both there when we were considering the comprehensive plan. I remember quite well a public hearing in the old historic city hall where there was, a group of citizens who were against many of the things that we were talking about in the comprehensive plan. And I really remember one of the testifiers there, Mr. Krosky, actually had a slideshow and some pictures. And one of his pictures was, this cute little craftsman house with this 5-story apartment building 6 feet away from it. And he says, this is what this is going to come to. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. And so this is not a new concern because it's been around for a long time. And so I appreciate the observations from the citizenry. I'm also, in this whole process that the city and the state have been going through over the last 4 or 5 years to try to increase the housing stock. I've also had some concerns about the pace of changes. I was really upset about all the work that we had done on the comprehensive plan and the code package and everything like that, specifically with regard to parking. And then the state overnight overturned all of that work. And I was really hot. I think it created a number of problems. So I share, the concern about all of these rapid fire changes, and we really don't know how things are going to turn out. And so I don't know if that's a slowdown, a pause, whatever you want to call it, because I think there's just a lot of uncertainty here about where this whole process is going. And quite frankly, I don't think any of us, foresaw many of the challenges that were raised by the quadplex, down in Harrison.
Go ahead.
I guess just, I'm not sure what I understand your bottom line to be, that we shouldn't move fast.
Yeah.
Okay. On any of it, you wouldn't move some parts of it.
Parts of it.
Okay.
Related. I'm not willing. I'm not ready to pick this and to go ahead and just pick the stuff at this point. I think there's a lot of complication between all of them.
We've been working on this since January, so it's surprising to hear a lot of these issues come up now. It's a little disappointing too, because I feel like really the state's overreach where they did nothing for affordable housing in those bills. Really put us in a bad spot. And now because of that, we're going to push off affordable housing incentives. I mean, that doesn't make sense. The state screwed this up, not us. So because of that, we're going to wait and kick the can down the road even longer, which is only going to exacerbate the issue even worse. So the state's overreach is basically bullying us into reconsidering our affordable housing incentives. But what do we think is going to happen if we wait? Do we think it's going to get cheaper? Do we think the state's going to do the right thing? No. So what do we have to do? Because at the end of the day, we still have a responsibility to do what we can to provide opportunities for the residents who live here, and for those who are struggling, and for those who at 80% MHI, which is 100% MHI, cannot afford a home right now in Milwaukie. I see this as two separate issues. There's the middle housing overreach issue, and there's affordability issue. Right now, market rate developers are punking us out of affordable options, out of affordable opportunities. Because instead of those 8 being built on that site for $450,000, which is not affordable, that's $500 a square foot at 800 square feet, mind you, that could have gone to a developer that actually gives a damn. And majority of those developers are nonprofits. We all know developers are out for their bottom line, majority of them. That's why there's two different ones. There's market rate developers and there's affordable housing developers. There's really no market rate developer who's going to take advantage of these incentives because there's no money in it. We sat down with a market rate developer in a work session, in a study session. And that developer said it straight out, I can't make money off this. I can't, there's nothing I can do. That's why I got to build and sell them at $450 or $475. This is targeted to the specific nonprofits and individuals that do these things. Like Proud Ground, who's building one on Harvey Street that's going to provide 25 houses starting at $250,000. So we're kind of in a predicament because we don't want market rate, but we also don't want to push for affordable. So what do we want to do? Because sitting on our hands and waiting is going to hurt other families that don't have time to sit on our hands and wait, right? Now, I understand the green space issue. I do. And I don't want that example on Harrison to define what affordability is going to look like and that be the reason we don't do it, because that's a completely separate development. That's not an affordability developer. That individual clearly did not care too much about the issues facing Milwaukie and cared more about their bottom line, right? So I'm not willing to let that development scare us out of this. Now, I do understand the green space issue because I had some questions, which I talked to Council President Anderson earlier today about 5 feet to 3.5 feet. 5 feet could be somebody's side garden, right? And does 1.5 feet out really make that huge of a difference? And is that something that we're really going to get the most bang for our buck? Or leaving it at 5 feet might be better because we have more opportunities to put in trees and green stuff that we need, that people are going to want. But I understand it's a give and take because we're at an impasse right now. We're at a point where it's green space or living space because we don't have any more space. So maybe that's something that we need to work out, but I am not willing to say no to incentives because of the developers who have historically taken advantage of these things to continue to bully us into not doing anything. I'm not willing to do that.
Council President?
I'll echo some of Councilor Kosaradi's sentiments. I think it's really important that we do something here. I think there's 4 meetings that we already had, plus the 2 planning commission meetings. Like there's been a lot of staff time that's got into this already. And there's we are in a housing crisis right now. There is an element of we need to move fast because the system is broken. It's not moving fast and breaking things. Things are already at that point. And so I think it's really important to me that we walk away tonight with an affordable housing package that we can show to our residents that we have going forward. I think that, like Councilor Kosaradi talked about, there's a difference between, I think 2 things need to happen at once. There are really clear directives that we got from our middle housing town hall about how we can mitigate the impacts of middle housing. I think that there are real concerns with neighborhoods growing and changing And the state has not done, the state is not really holding our hands and showing us how to do this. This is cities having to go forge out on their own and figure out how to do this. And I think that work is critically important as we talk about this housing production strategy, as we talk about other housing production strategies, and as we just talk about what it looks like to implement state laws. I don't think, and I don't want that to be the reason why we do not pass an affordable housing code. I think, and I might be, I think of this code in two ways. I spoke with Dev Northwest. They're an affordable housing developer that does a lot of work at the state level. And I kind of asked them, what would be your dream affordable housing code? And they said, just allow affordable housing by right. Let us do whatever we need to. We're not trying to screw people over. We're trying to make this work as much as possible. That would mean no setbacks. That would mean no vegetation. That would mean you can just build. And I was like, well, that seems like a little bit much to the Northwest, but I love the sentiment. I do think the flip side is like, we need to make it, when people are coming in, trying to make affordable housing as easy as possible for them to be able to configure these units, to have a project pencil out. It is really difficult to get these projects to fiscally work. And I think allowing those nonprofits to have as much flexibility as possible while still maintaining baseline livability standards, we're not allowing development outright. We're still protecting certain elements like setback and vegetation in our tree code that we think are really important to livability. I think that that's a healthy balance to establish. I think the one area where maybe I differ from you all, or maybe I'm playing this guy idealist, is at the heart of like how we solve our affordable housing crisis. We hear that this is a supply problem, and I fundamentally believe that. We have not built enough housing to be able to keep up with the demand. And so we see market rate housing become increasingly unaffordable. And you see middle housing that comes online that is $300,000 less than a single family home, but it's still $400,000, which people balk at, as they should, because that is a lot of money. To fix that, we will have to increase our housing supply. And I think that that is one part of the equation. But as we fix our housing supply, the reason people balk at $400,000 is they cannot afford that here and now. And this package is what allows us to address those acute needs for people who need income restricted affordable housing now. There is a market solution, but then there is also a more heavy-handed government solution that we need to plan on. And I think that we need income restricted affordable units at a lot of price points. Mary, you brought up that 80% AMI is Milwaukee's average income. 40% of Milwaukee residents are cost burdened in their housing. There are people who are making 120% AMI who are struggling to afford a house in Milwaukee. Frankly, I want as many income restricted units as possible because that guarantee over time is a guarantee that that house will stay affordable in perpetuity. So my foolish dream here is that we will not only see affordable housing nonprofits build this, but we might see those greedy developers say, okay, I'll make one of my units affordable in exchange for these variances. And maybe that's idealistic. I've gotten a lot of pushback that that might not be the case. But I believe there's such a fundamental need for as many of these income restricted units as possible to make it so our city can remain a working class community, that I see all of these trade-offs that we're willing to make as really important. I think about the last thing I'll say is like, we hear a lot about livability. And at the end of the day, our city cannot be livable if it's not affordable for people to live in. And if our city has a homeless crisis that expands like Portland's is right now, that to me is not a livable city either. We talk a lot about what we do. We heard about some of those programs. We're going to be talking about them later with our public safety. We see a lot of the like back end interventions for homelessness. This to me is a really proactive upstream intervention that will help people stay off of our streets, that will help our city maintain its livability. And there are absolutely trade-offs, but I think those are trade-offs that I'm going to make. So I'm happy to talk about little tweaks that people think that we need to make, but overall, I'm really supportive of this package. And I think that this is a direction that I'm proud to see the city continue to go in.
Okay, Councilor Stavensward.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm going to try to make my remarks brief because I appreciate all the thoughtful comments that folks have made tonight. So thanks to community members that have come out to testify. And I am pretty sure one of you was in the Reddit thread talking about this. And so if you're still in the room, I appreciate you synthesizing all this information for other community members that weren't able to be a part of the town hall or here tonight or for a number of reasons. So I think I appreciate that this is a really challenging situation. I think for me, it kind of comes down to, you know, I think it was Joseph that mentioned that, like, even with these types of incentives in place, the likelihood that developers will be able to finance affordable housing projects is sometimes very slim. And the developers that move into affordable housing.
You're cutting out. Counselor, we do not hear you. It looks like your audio has been muted accidentally, maybe.
It's still
Or is
showing Counselor Stavendord on Zoom and not muted, but
Okay. Counselor?
Like text her, so she's she's probably giving such a great.
Maybe Joseph, do you want to try and finish off where she was going?
I texted her. She says it's okay. Just skip me.
Oh.
Wow, okay. So, I do think everything we've heard is that it is the known affordable housing developers who are likely to take us up on this. And so to me, it is doing something to adopt a code that applies in the in the DMU and whichever, it's not NMU, it's GMU. There's too many MUs. I think that's still creating some opportunities, some pretty big opportunity. And I note that we will be, we have up on our planning to-do list the high density residential zone. Oh, yep.
That's exactly what we want. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Mayor. But I just wanted to clarify that for mixed-use development, this all applies to the GMU and the DMU zones. But multi-unit residential would be, because those are allowed in those mixed-use zones as well. But the RHD, multi-unit development in the RHD zones is part of this code as well. So it's not just the GMU and the DMU zones. The high-density residential zone, a multi-unit development in the high-density residential zone gets to apply to this, including that that extra 20 feet of height. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't only thinking things were happening in the two mixed-use zones. The high-density residential zone is also in play when it comes to the development. Okay, great.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Mayor Beatty, Counselor Stavendord is back on Zoom.
Okay, are you able to hear us?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. Our Wi-Fi went down, so hopefully this connection will work. And the test will be how long I talk. So all I really wanted to say is that the developers that are in the field of affordable housing development, for the most part, have been those that are not in it to make a ton of money. It's very hard to finance these projects. It's really hard to work through all of the different parameters to get a project to come to fruition. And it's not advantageous for a developer to flirt with the idea of being denied an occupancy permit, or even worse, having to go to court with a jurisdiction if they fail to, if they fail to meet the parameters of the deed restriction. And I know that there are always bad apples, and there are always going to be some exceptions somewhere to this rule. But I just really appreciate what Joseph said about the folks that will go down the path of trying to make this work. I think that also local jurisdictions are in a really tough spot because we have rules from the state that open up the potential to build more affordability. And we have, in Milwaukie, a council that is and has been willing to lean into that and try and find the right like combination of what that looks like for our city. But it also means changing the built environment. And that is really tough. It's a lot to work through. And, just demonstrated by working through all of the details of middle housing alone, we are willing to put in the time, and I really appreciate the planning commission and their service to the city and really struggling with these issues. So I think that one other point that is important is that when something goes wrong, it comes down to the capacity of the local jurisdiction to be able to either litigate or have the capacity to do the code enforcement. And that's something that I think a lot of cities are struggling with, and luckily we are also facing that conversation head on around what funding looks like and being able to support the capacity locally to, to stand behind the legislation that we're designing. So those are my thoughts and my comments, and I appreciate the remarks of my colleagues this evening as well.
And so you are saying you support the package as written?
I thought we were deliberating and commenting. I didn't know that we were doing a straw poll.
Oh, well, I mean, I think most people have sort of said where they stand on the package. So I think it would be helpful to know, I think that.
Okay, sure, I can do that. I support the package.
As written, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Council President?
To your point about should we restrict this to just GMU and DMU, I don't really think that is something that we should do for a few reasons. One, Councilor Khosrowbadi mentioned Proud Ground, who is developing something in our RMD zone. We also have the Sparrow site that I would hope this code package would apply to. We've got the scattered sites that exist within our RMD. And I think that there are a variety of options that we can see. That I think that it is valuable to have affordability be brought into our neighborhoods and accessible in our neighborhoods. I think that we see examples of cities really concentrating where poverty is located, and that I don't think is an advisable social policy. And so saying that this code will only apply to small sections of downtown, I don't think is, I just don't think that that's an appropriate path for us to go. I like the way that this code thoughtfully includes designations outside of just our downtown. I like that it treats them differently. I think that that's really important. We heard that. But I think it's still important to have this apply to our RHD and RMD zones.
So I don't think anybody was suggesting that we don't do anything in our RHD and whatever, in our residential zones, medium density. And we're going to go into the high density residential zone soon. That's relatively high on the project list. And I think we have a conversation to have out of the middle housing town hall about some of the middle housing rules generally that could be a place to, to sort of right size the part of this package that relates to the middle density residential zones. But to me, it is absolutely not right sized at this moment. It is tone deaf to the things we heard at the middle housing town hall, which is not staff's fault because they've been working on this package a long time before that town hall. But I just think we owe, there are things in it that I think bear more conversation when it comes to to the middle density housing. And I think it would be a shame to rush this through and get some problematic things as a result before we have sort of those broader conversations. Plus, it's also much harder to undo, right? I mean, in fact, I think the new legislation even puts a finer point on that, as I understand it, that, you know, if you grant something, you can't roll it, it's making it harder to roll it back. So once we do this.
Don't worry, that was amended out.
It was?
Yep, so that's not included.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, I'm certainly not, I'm not saying let's not do anything in middle housing or medium density housing. I just think that needs its own conversation in light of the things we heard at the middle housing town hall.
If I may, Mayor, but why do you see these as two of the same though? Because I feel like the town hall was separate, because a lot of the complaints out of the town hall, actually, one of them was that they're not affordable.
Oh,
So how
sure.
do you, how are you seeing these as two in the same? And not
No, I'm
separate?
saying this package would do things. I came out of the middle housing town hall with my own sort of checklist in my head of, okay, I want to revisit lot coverage, and I want to revisit green space and the trees, and, you know, and so I had this checklist of things in my head that I wanted to revisit. And here we are actually doubling down. If we pass this package, we are doubling down on all those things. We're opening the door to, you know, more density, more, you know, lesser setbacks, less green space, less potential for trees. I think, you know, we say our tree code still applies. I think we don't know, because some of these developments, that one on Olson Street, where it has space for trees, you're not gonna be able to grow a very big tree. That tree is not gonna, I just cannot see how that property ever meets a 40% tree canopy.
Is that an affordable development?
No. But I mean, but we're gonna take.
Pace though, you're talking about opening the doors. How many affordable developments have we had compared to market rate? So if we're gonna open the door to anything, I would say we'd wanna open the door to affordable units as opposed to market rate units that are the ones that are really causing the issues. That middle housing bill is what's causing the issues. I don't see how the affordability part has anything to really do with that.
Well,
Opening the
except that
doors-
we're lessening the protections for trees. We're lessening the
But we're
protections for
not.
green
We're-
spaces.
How if we have to stick to the code? I mean, staff made that pretty clear.
No, I mean, the code says,
And I honestly feel like this package is our only ability and opportunity to push back against the massive market rate housing that we're seeing take up the space that we need for these type of developments.
common area, minimum landscaping or open space reduction up to 25%.
Can you clarify, Vera? Because you said before that we're not changing the tree code, but it seems like the mayor is implying that we are.
No, the tree code still applies as it is right now.
So you still have to do 40%.
You still have to, yes,
Okay.
you still have to meet the 40% canopy.
Okay.
Yeah, we're allowing a reduction, but that has to be balanced against the requirements of the tree code.
And like you said earlier, the requirements of the tree code are strict enough that they might constrain even the variance that we're giving here for vegetation.
I only say that, and I don't want to be a junior urban forester here, but the tree code has requirements for soil volume, for planting requirements, for making sure that the soils are going to be able to accommodate the trees. And obviously there are many, many different trees that you can choose from to be able to meet that canopy standard. Some of them are big, like a white oak, some are small, but then you'd need to plant more of them. All I say is that just like anything, you know, we tell people at the counter that this property, you could build a quadplex here, but you have to meet this, and this, right? So everything kind of pushes against each other until you work out the math. So yes, you could reduce the setbacks. Yes, you could reduce your open space, but you still have to meet your 40% canopy. So whether or not someone could actually maximize all of these reductions in all of this green space depends on what their tree code requirement, it's all needs to fit together as a puzzle. So someone may be able to maximize all of this and still meet the canopy. I haven't, worked out a bunch of scenarios to see if that could happen, but we are not touching the tree code. The tree code requirements still remain. So, yes.
Okay, we do have another hearing to have, and so I guess if people have said their piece, and it sounds like we have 3 people who are willing to pass the code as presented, maybe we can end deliberation and move to a vote. Council President.
Well, I have one piece of bad news. What we did not deliberate at all is the planning commission amendments, which we maybe should turn to.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So there were 2. The 60 versus 99 years, go with your planning, go with incentivizing ownership, go with the longer years for rental versus ownership. If we're being told that that is a, growing trend, thoughts? 60?
I agree with the 99. If that's where, because we had the problem with the 30, that's where the 60 came, right? Because the 30 clock ran out and we're like, well, we need to double it, make it 60, but I think 99 is where we need to be.
I think I would agree. The caveat that I would say is I really do take Julie's experience. There is something there. She's worked in this far more than any of us have. And so I would say when we already committed to revisiting this code and seeing how it works. And I would be very curious to see, I want to put forward a code that's actually used by affordable housing developers as opposed to just something that sits on paper. And so if we're seeing, like Julie predicted, the 99 years is a barrier, then we should revisit it. But I think that we have good points. We want to see more home ownership, and I appreciate that this is something that we give them. But Julie, I'm listening in case you come back.
Okay, other views on the 99 versus 60? Okay. So I guess we're sticking with the 99. And then the townhomes, number versus foot, the length, the 200 feet of length, no matter how many townhomes that happens to be. And that is a full downtown block. I agree with Vera's point that it doesn't make sense to regulate it so much by number. The length does make more sense, but is 200 too much?
I would say, I would agree. We kind of have adopted this principle here that I think applies to housing more broadly. The box to me is way more important than what's inside of this. And I think this is another good example. I know the Planning Commission kind of really deliberated on how they got to that 200 number. And I think that 200, from that discussion, I think that 200 number sounds appropriate to me. So I think that's all I'd say.
Other thoughts?
I trust the Planning Commission. That 200 one, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, sounds like the 200 is the consensus. Other things that need a resolution before we have a motion? Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I move for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance amending the regulations of Milwaukie Municipal Code MMC Section 19.511 Affordable Housing Incentives to provide code-based incentives for the development of affordable housing. File hashtag ZA-2025-003.
I second.
And that's with some amendments that Vera has noted through the evening, this evening. Okay. It's been moved and seconded for the first, it's been moved and seconded for the first and second readings by a title only and adoption of the ordinance amending the regulations of Milwaukie Municipal Code, Section 19.511, Affordable Housing Incentives to provide code-based incentives for the development of affordable housing. File number ZA-2025-003. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. No.
No.
So it Ms. Sager does not need to read it. Since the vote was not unanimous, the ordinance must be read at two separate meetings. Ms. Sager, please read the ordinance one time in full.
Happy to. An ordinance of the City of Milwaukie, Oregon, amending Milwaukee Municipal Code, Title 19 zoning ordinance for the purpose of providing code-based incentives for the development of affordable housing, primary file number ZA 2025-003.
Okay, the second reading and adoption will be set for the next council meeting on September 2nd, 2025. All right, so that ends that item. We are going to take a break and come back at 5 after 9 for the public hearing on the public safety fee.
He's so bad.
Okay, we are back on the record, and the public hearing on the proposed public safety fee adoption is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to hear the staff report, take public comments, deliberate, and consider approving the proposed fee adoption. Does any council member wish to announce an actual or potential conflict of interest? Seeing and hearing none, I'll turn it over to Ms. Sager.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. I am here tonight with my esteemed colleagues, Chief Ryan Burdick of the Police Department and Library Director Brent Husher. Michael Osborne completes the kind of quartet that has been ushering this through, but he's in Hawaii, so we're us all gonna, spare him some thoughts. But thank you again. I have a very abridged presentation compared to the one we showed you at our last regular session. But for folks watching at home, I did kind of want to recap how we got to this proposal that is in front of council tonight. So why is there a need for public safety investment? When we talk about public safety in Milwaukie, I think it's very important that we are not just talking about our police department. We are talking about what we call our public safety continuum of care, which speaks to the multiple departments in our organization that provide safety services. And safety for us really is a multifaceted approach. Yes, it's emergency response, but it's also supporting folks who are in crisis, and it's holding folks accountable when they have done unsafe things or broken laws. All three of these pieces are critical to the very compassionate, human-centered approach the city of Milwaukie takes to public safety. That's why you have staff here representing not just the police, but also library, municipal court, and other departments. I mentioned in our previous presentation that really this conversation started actually in a budget space, in a financial space, because we are seeing, and we are not alone in this, but we are seeing in Milwaukie that demand for services is outpacing our resources for a variety of reasons. There's revenue constraints that come from measures 5 and 50, but there's also pressures on the cost of services. Staffing, training, and tools, those are all rising at the cost of inflation and other pressures, and we are being asked to do more and more. So as council directed us to look at ways we could stabilize our financial situation, we also looked across our general fund and said, if we aren't able to do this, what are the services that are most at risk? And I feel, and my team feels, having looked at that data, having looked across the general fund, and having looked at really where we can cut fat, which is really very little places right now. We are at the point now where not identifying new revenue and new resources to support public safety means that these services will be at risk of cuts and reductions. So without taking action, these services will be impacted. I just want to briefly capture in our last regular session, you heard directly from Brent and Ryan about their experience running their departments and what they're seeing on the ground in terms of these increased demands and these resource challenges. But just to recap some highlights again of why this keeps me up at night. Since 2020, calls for police response in Milwaukie have increased 21%. We now have more calls per service per year than we have people in Milwaukie, over 21,000. But in that time, staffing has not changed. And in fact, if you look over a broader time horizon, overall sworn officers are down 6 since our chief was sworn in the early 2000s. Those calls, so as we get more and more volume of calls, they're also getting more complex. They're getting more complex for a few reasons. Some are good reasons, good pressures. We know that Milwaukie is seeing an economic renaissance, which is great, but that does increase public safety demand. And we've talked a lot about affordable housing tonight. It's an important goal of the city, but more housing, more people does increase demand for public safety services. But I call those good pressures. The bad pressures, the trends that we don't like to see, but are undeniably having an impact on our public safety continuum of care, are increasing behavioral health crises, increasing instances of substance abuse, and just one sobering statistic. Milwaukie was #1 last year in Clackamas County for drug overdose-related 911 calls. We have Glenn, we have the superhero Glenn. We've talked a little bit about Glenn already tonight in the context of our Stabilization Center project. Adding Glenn was probably the best thing that this city did in the last several years. But Glenn works Monday through Thursday. He's one guy, and that one guy alone made 527 contacts with folks needing behavioral health crisis. And that is that is not counting the demand that we see on weekends, on evenings. And so we just know that it's just a small sliver of what the real demand is. Our library, which serves more than 600 patrons a day, that's about $250,000 in a year, and is open 7 days a week. We are so proud of our library. It provides exemplary library services. It also functions, frankly, as a day center. It's a free, safe place for people to come and connect to services and spend their day. We love that. We want to keep that friendly, open door atmosphere, but it also comes with safety challenges. Since we implemented our PIT system, our patron incident tracking system, we've logged 327 incidents. 35% of those required a Milwaukie Police Department response. And this is really the tip of the iceberg. We only record the ones that get to the level of, having an actual real safety concern. There are so many daily connections and referrals to resources and services. And then finally, on that kind of accountability piece of the puzzle, we have seen our court dockets return to those pre-COVID levels, around 5,000 citations a year. We are proud of our municipal court. We try to get people in efficiently, respectfully, and swiftly, but we have one court staffer. We used to have more staffing than that. We reduced it during COVID. The demand has increased. We have not been able to increase the staffing. So that brings me to, as your city manager, if I'm looking around these different services and thinking to myself, how am I going to sustain the service expectations our community has? This is what I believe we need. I believe we need an additional behavioral health specialist. I believe we need someone at the police department who's dedicated to training so that we can really walk our talk on our values. We do a great job with the resources we have, but I will be honest, we kind of have to do the bare minimum because of how bleak our staffing is. We do need more patrol officers. I've shared that our current estimates have been based on 2 additional patrol officers. We need more support for the letting library to ensure that safety for patrons and for staff. And again, I've shared that our preliminary estimates would be based on 2 additional staff members there. And we need more support for our municipal court. My estimates have been based on one staff member there. If you add all that up, it's about $900,000 to $1 million annually. I've been pretty clear in my previous presentations that this is not a budget ask today. We have a very public and prescribed budgeting process. So any ask for a new FTE or new resources would come to budget committee and come to council. But I want to be transparent about what we've used as sort of our target, the assumptions behind what we're trying to do with this revenue stream. We have been talking to council and the budget committee for a while about why are we looking to do this through the utility bill. And this is not something Milwaukie invented. There are many, many cities across Oregon that utilize this method. I didn't include the slide, but we have kind of a slide showing almost 10 different cities who have a public safety or similar fee. And really it is this strategic approach to looking at public safety, one of municipal's core services, like a utility. That means that demand is going to fluctuate over time. You may have times of acute need where you see trends and pressures sending certain signals, and having a part of the funding stream come through a utility bill gives control to turn that lever up and down based on that demand. The rates would be set by council via the city's consolidated fee schedule, which is reviewed at least annually. It can be reviewed whenever you ask for it to be reviewed, and it can be changed, increased, or decreased as those needs change. So this is, again, starting to treat public safety like we treat our other essential infrastructure. We had a lot of talk 2 weeks ago about the rate design. We showed you several scenarios. Council gave us unanimous direction to pursue a rate structure that is $7 for residential customers, $5 for multifamily customers, and a tiered commercial approach that is a minimum of $5 and a maximum of $50. This is based on engineering trip data, the same data that we utilize for the SAFE and SSMP rates. We also would exempt anyone registered through our low-income utility assistance program. We have been talking to folks about this for a while, starting back at that May budget committee meeting. I'm not going to read all this to you, but we've gone to committees, we've gone to council several times, library board, and then we did hold a community Q&A at City Hall last week. We had about 16 people in attendance, 8 in person, 8 online. Really great conversation. I recommend watching that video if you haven't already. I really appreciate folks who came to ask their questions and express their concerns. And then we're here tonight. So I'm just going to briefly talk a little bit about some themes that came out of those community conversations and just a few kind of quick responses to it. So I think by and large, we know we are in a time when folks are facing affordability challenges. It is why this council has adopted a goal of affordability. And so I hear and deeply feel concerns or questions we get about impacts on folks living on low or fixed incomes. I do feel that one benefit of proposing this through the utility bill is that ability to exempt low-income customers. We heard loud and clear from council that we need to be doing as much outreach as possible to ensure folks who can enroll in that utility assistance program are doing so, and we absolutely will be doing that. We also, I think by putting down the utility bill, you also have an opportunity through the affordability goal to look at other strategies that could potentially offset the impact of a $7 or $5 additional charge. We heard a lot of feedback on opinions about the investment priorities. So that wish list I showed you, some folks said, I think we should do 4 behavioral health specialists. I think we should do more to this department, less to this department. All very valid feedback. I just want to reiterate again that we'll be bringing this through the public budgeting process so folks can give that input to you and you can reflect to us what you think those priorities should be. That was really a starting place to show you right now where I think those gaps are most critical. We got some questions about rate design. It is a really complicated thing. I think I've been transparent that most other cities just do a flat fee because it's complicated. I appreciate the direction we've got from council to do a rate design that is as equitable as possible. We based it on TRIPS data because that's the best proxy we have right now, actual available data that could tie customers to a sense of public safety demand. I will happily look for other data sets and we could always adjust this rate design in the future, but for now, this is consistent with how we do SAFE and SSMP. And we explained to some folks who asked questions about the multifamily rate is a little bit lower because again, in the TRIPS data algorithm, the general consensus is that a multifamily unit would generate fewer trips than a single family residence. Transparency of expenditures and data reporting was a big theme, and I just want to back this up with my word. If this is adopted tonight, I commit that we will transparently report on how every dollar that is generated through this gets spent. We do that, through our budget and through our audit process, but I'll go a step beyond that. This is you putting faith in us to do this, and so I want to make sure we are reporting often on both how these are being expended and the outcomes it's supporting. We've thrown a lot of stats at you about patron incident responses, about overdose calls, about we do our stops data every year. That will be a commitment. As long as I'm in this chair, you will always get that data reporting back on this. And then finally, implementation via the utility bill. Some folks saying, why isn't this going out through a tax? We did consider that. We've talked with you in the budget committee about that. The short answer about why this method is we need this money yesterday, and implementing it via the utility bill means that I can start having these resources to invest in city services the month after. Property tax would take about 2.5 years for that revenue to actually hit the city's bank accounts. Property tax, also you have to gear up for the big public vote, which is important. And I think, as we've talked about, that we'll probably need to be looking at property tax sometime in the future as we continue to grapple with some larger financial stability concerns. But I think with a utility fee and a rate that you control and can turn down or turn up as needs happen, you have a lot of that control and the ability to exempt low-income customers. So those are some of the reasons behind why this implementation vehicle is what we've proposed. That's it. So my
slides are lagging behind.
My slides are lagging. I'm sorry. See, this is what happens when I get too cute with my animations. Okay. next steps. Council to take public comment if we've received any beyond the written correspondence, or if anyone here wants to testify. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your questions. And then if this is approved tonight, we would incorporate it into the city's consolidated fee schedule, and it would be implemented on the November or December bills. We would also, when we do that, do a large education component and insert explaining the bill. We recognize it is awkward that there is a safe fee on your bill already. That is safe access for everyone. That is a transportation fee. We will clarify that before we add a public safety fee and create more confusion on the very similar names. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have, we don't have, I don't have any yellow cards. Do you have anyone online?
We have nobody on Zoom.
Okay. Do we, I mean, we have gotten some correspondence sprinkled in. Do you have a list? Can you tell us who?
Yeah, let's see
Make sure
here.
we've
We
seen it
had,
all.
I want to say, I think it was 3.
Sheets is on,
Bernie
Stout,
yeah.
and Elliott, and the Elliott one was the one I mentioned during community comment. I think it's less about this topic specifically and more about some street maintenance those neighbors are doing and wanting to talk to our public works department about that.
So with that, if I don't have anybody trying to testify, I'm not going to read that part of the script. Any questions for Emma before we go into deliberation? Yes? Council
For the
President?
record, Adam was raising his goose first. I just have a quick question. So I know David Chitson has dove in our budgets far more than most people have. And can you help me? He talks about a 17% increase in police budgets. And I just want to understand, is that an accurate number? How do you kind of justify large increases before, continued increases, and then even understanding, like, I know this is not the budget process, but what percent of the funds do you anticipate spending on police versus that continuum of care?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, Mr. Chitazan is correct. He took a screenshot straight from our budget. There was a $2 million increase in the last biennium to the police budget. It also, you can see in there, we did not increase staffing. This is what running an organization in this day and age does. There are inflationary pressures, there are cost wage increases, overtime utilization increases that we've been documenting and reporting transparently to Budget Committee. And then the cost of equipment, the cost of our services, the cost of radios, all of that has gone up. So that is accurate. But I will say that that 2 million was not padding anything. That was essential investments in maintaining service levels. You know, you guys told us to pass a hold the line budget. We did that wherever we possibly could. If we were contractually obligated to increase, we had to do that. And we went through bargaining with both of our unions the year before, right before that budget was adopted. So that is what explains that increase. But he's absolutely right. That is an increase in there. But it was not an increase to add more people or add more upon what we had in the previous biennium. And to your second question, Council President, let me just go back. So again, not the budget process, but just being transparent today, what I would have asked for would be an additional behavioral health specialist, a dedicated training officer at the MPD, and 2 patrol officers. So you're looking at the 4 FTE that would be housed in our public safety department. But that would be brought to you as a proposal for consideration through the budgeting process.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Councilor Bilshabani?
Yeah, I just, and I don't know if this is the right place for this, but I actually just wanted to ask about transparency and accountability. Because that seems to be a theme too that a lot of people, and rightfully so. And I'm questioning if we can, to help with that and to be accountable to the public, if we can set up something, like if we're gonna, at any time we decide to increase the fee, that we look at performance metrics, whether that be stops data or, you know, encounters with police, and just what, you know.
Sure.
Something like something that shows that it's not just an automatic thing, something that shows that we are accountable for this and we are being transparent and
Sure.
we are holding public safety in a high standard as it should be.
Yeah. Great point, Counselor. I agree. The chief and I and Brent and Michael, we are all very committed to data-driven decision-making and transparent reporting. Any change you would make in the future to this would happen through a hearing just like this. And you have my commitment that any proposal, so A, through the annual rate setting process, but B, if you see something in a presentation we give and you go, hey, I want to come back, give me some data because I want to look at if that public safety fee needs to be reconsidered, we will report on those metrics, both the metrics of how the dollars are being spent, but also the metrics on changes to outcomes. That you can connect to this. So I commit to doing that annually, at least through the rate setting process, but more often as you requested.
And then the last question is about metrics in terms of what the result is from this investment, because we made it a point about the overdoses and how high that is. So having some metrics to be able to say like, hey, look, after whatever year, 2 years, this is probably gonna take longer as staff. But this is where we're at. This is where overdoses are at now. This is what your investment has turned out.
Absolutely. You know, there's a lot of this that's upstream that we can't sadly fully affect. But you know, the data that Glenn brings you at least once a year talking about both the quantitative but the qualitative impact our behavioral health support has on vulnerable community members. The STOPS data that Chief brings, Brent's monthly library reports where we talk about this. These are all examples of places where we can absolutely track this. And again, I don't take any kind of ask for a fee increase or addition lightly. I have, I think, shared with many of you that you know, I really believe in this, and I believe in this because I believe a year from now, 6 months from now, I can point to very visible, tangible benefits this is going to lead to. And my fear is if we don't do this, I could also point to tangible and visceral impacts of service reductions.
Thank you. Councilor Stavanger, any questions for you?
The only question really I think that I have, it has to do a little bit with metrics as well. I would like to be able to establish baseline for where we're at. And, you know, I appreciate that we have some of that data in terms of how we compare to other Clackamas County cities, but honestly, there's different scale of like urbanization across Clackamas County as well. So I'd like to see if we can establish baseline around number of incidents of escalation at the library, utilization as the the Crisis Stabilization Center, Caring Place, and the Addiction Recovery Campus come online. So like not just in terms of what it looks like at the interpersonal level, you know, number of people from on Milwaukie caseload, you know, going through that system, but how we are affecting the system with additional staff. So like when we have 2 behavioral health specialists or 3, you know, how are we actually making the system better so that we can move upstream, so that we can prevent some of these things before they happen for folks that call Milwaukie home?
Sure.
And how can we model that for other jurisdictions around the city? I mean, when we put in our application for SHS funding for behavioral health specialists, we saw that you know, there was a trend across the county that other jurisdictions were looking at our model, seeing the effectiveness of this model, and seeing that there's a usefulness in their own jurisdictions. And that's a huge role that that we have played, that the police department has played, and that individuals in the positions of behavioral health support have played. And I think that that's a really good trajectory to keep on. So I'd like to establish baselines and then build on that, not only to show the importance to our community members of investing in these assets, but then also to show as an example that you can actually prevent something before it occurs.
Excellent point, Counselor, and very happy to do that. One thing I'm not sure you all know is every kind of early spring, late winter, the police leadership it's a thick binder of data on their whole shop and give, I've had one, but gave the previous city manager a multi-hour briefing. This year, you did get to see some of that because we started this conversation after that, but I would like to make a commitment that we will make that an annual thing. After my big binder presentation, we'll come here and give you a big binder presentation because again, I really want you to have my commitment that, that we are doing this in a data-driven and transparent way.
Thank you. Counselor Stevens, that's it for you?
Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Massey?
Emma, could you go back to the FTE count slide?
Of course.
So there's some flexibility here.
Yep.
And so it kind of goes along with what Adam was talking about earlier, is at some point, I would just like to see what the real FTE count is.
Sure.
What the spend rate is.
Mm-hmm.
And what the performance metrics are. Now, I don't know if that's I'm not sure that fits neatly into a budget meeting category. And I'm not interested in, in looking over your shoulder every week, but pick a time.
Yes.
6 months, 12 months, whatever makes sense to circle back so that we can in fact, trace these costs to these investments and these outcomes.
Absolutely, Counselor.
Because otherwise they might get lost in the general fund,
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think you and I share a love of dashboards and of performance metric tracking. So absolutely. And, in each of these places, each of my departments, whether they're a public safety, continuum of care department or not, that's my expectation. And we can absolutely make sure that data is transparently reported consistently to council as well.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I would, is there any discussion needed among council or are we ready to go to a motion?
I might say there's a saying in the legislature you put a marker down. Maybe I've said this here, but I take the concerns with this being a flat tax on people. And I think that as we look for future, if there is something that happens in our general fund in the future, as we look at other taxing mechanisms, I think it's important that we balance these utility fees that are flat taxes with progressive income like a property tax. I think you've made a really compelling case that this is a separate utility. I really appreciate the low income exemption. And I think that all the other affordability work that we're doing is important, but I'm putting that marker down. The other thing I'll say is I'll echo what you're hearing about transparency. We just saw the Portland Central City Task Force put out a release today that basically said, here's what we recommend for Portland area jurisdictions as they adopt new taxes. A sunset 5-year kind of report back period. I don't think we need to sunset this necessarily, or at least talk about that yet. But I do think that reporting is going to be really, really important and good that we model. So I appreciate all the work you've done here, though. This is great.
Thank you, Council President.
Okay. With that, I will entertain a motion. By the way, you have put the marker down many times.
Mayor Beatty said, be quiet. Should I move to close the public comment part first, or did we already do that?
It's not quite the same when it's not a land use hearing. We don't actually have we do have a thing to close. Okay, go ahead.
I move to close the public comment part of the proposed public safety fee adoption.
I second.
All those in favor of closing the public comment period, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, say no. None heard. The public comment part of the hearing is closed. Is there any council discussion? Is someone ready to read a motion? They're pointing at you, Counselor Massey.
Did you say the council was ready for a vote?
Yes,
Okay. I move to approve the resolution adopting the public safety fee.
I second.
it's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution adopting the public safety fee. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. It passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Milwaukie.
All right. So council reports. We have a letter to the legislature on the transportation bill. Then just before I left home to come, just before I left home to come here, I got a copy of the -2 amendment to the transportation bill. I don't know what has changed, and when I talked to the council president at our break, he didn't really know what had changed either. That's,
My understanding is we're not going to see major changes to the framework. I think there might be some tweaks to title and registration fees or some things around the edges, but the larger
but nothing that
swaths-
would change the letter that you drafted.
I don't think so, especially because the letter is so vague that we're not commenting on
Specific
yeah.
parts, yeah. It's about the general need, yeah. So, that letter was in everyone's packet. I hope everyone had a chance to read it. Are folks good with signing on to that letter and getting it to the legislature before their special session next week? You said yes? Yes. Counselor Stavengard?
Yep.
Okay.
The only thing I might add is we taught, let me go home.
You closed the sale.
No. Just to make it explicit, I put co-chairs McLean and Gorsuch. It's not clear that they'll be the co-chairs. Is everyone okay if I change that? If the co-chairs change, or we can do.
I will say the MMC addressed their letter to Governor Kotek, the Speaker, and the Senate President, and just bypassed the committee. And what do you think that's poor form, or do you think that's the thing to do?
I was a stickler for that form, but we can do whatever we want as long as people are okay with that. I felt like Robert might want to weigh in and talk a lot about it, but.
Okay. All right, so we have that letter. I did have some other things I wanted to do council reports on, but given the hour, I'm gonna probably save those till next meeting. Anybody else?
It doesn't get better. Let's go.
No, I haven't even, no. Anybody else have a council report? Oh, well, I will say, the city manager, the police chief, and Councilor Koster-Body and I got a little tour of the first building at Hillside yesterday. And it's looking lovely. It is set to, they will be inviting everybody for some sort of an opening event in November. They're not going to have a huge, big, grand opening public event until spring spring or early summer when all 3 buildings are done. But they will have some kind of an opening event in November before they start placing residents in the building. But they are already starting to, talk with the people in the cottages out on the rest of the property about who wants to move in and the relocation of the people who were moved out in terms of who wants to move in. So it's moving. It looks nice. They have a community garden for 50, which is pretty good. Anything you guys want to add to that?
We did bring up, the reliance on emergency services, and, we asked them about, if they've, talked to the hospital, problem Milwaukie, about, staffing issues and, the influx of more people, because they're probably going to need those services more often than not. And then we asked about the public safety aspect in terms of being good stewards and partners with our police department, ensuring that management takes an active role in ensuring that, our officers can actually enforce our laws and And so that's certain things that happened in the past, not with our department, but things like, you know, what happened to the Washington County deputy doesn't happen to our officers.
Yeah, I was very appreciative of their willingness to discuss that. We're gonna have a follow-on meeting between the property management staff and MPD. And I would like to create a, whether it's good neighbor agreement or a good partner agreement with the county and all the partners involved on that project, just like we have with the Stabilization Center.
Yeah. It was encouraging. And it's amazing how well it's, and they did share with us, like, yeah, there's actually, when we first started talking about Hillside, it was 2 phases, but it's really ending up being 3 phases. So this was phase 1, 275 units. The next phase is 3 smaller buildings, 3 or 4 smaller buildings. D and E, this is A, B, and C. Those are D1 and D2 and E1 and E2. And then the area closest to Balfour Street, to the single-family homes over there, will be pretty exciting. It's going to be, part of it's going to be Bridge Meadows, that which I think I've talked to you guys before. That's the mix of seniors with families with kids in foster care. And part of it's going to be Short Stack doing more homeownership opportunities. So it's looking good. Yeah.
Do you know, are they going to be? Yeah. Are those sections funded, or are they looking for funding?
The next section is funded, I believe, and
Okay.
they put in their building permits recently. So they do expect to close the rest of the cottages and move everybody by next summer and start construction next summer on the next phase. Now that final phase, I don't think that all the funding's there for that yet.
That's fine. I will say, this is a good reminder, your planning website, you can't click on the links to planning projects.
We know, we're fixing it.
Okay, thank you.
We're fixing it. We're fixing it.
Okay, yeah, I give her constant. There's some website tweaking that needs to happen. Okay, with that, if nobody else has any council reports, I'll entertain a motion to
Move to
adjourn.
adjourn the session.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. We're adjourned. Okay. Is this your pen?